Chapter 969. Blinded. After Shui Yanyu and Hu Feiyun had left, Ling Han finally began to seriously observe the cave ahead. This cave was very big, and because there was lava flowing in the underground river, it was not dark. However, it was not all that bright, either. He spotted a colossal lava beast in the innermost depths. An ordinary lava beast would only be about 3 meters tall and 6 meters wide. But this one was as tall as 15 meters and as wide as 30. Its skin was also darker, and covered with strange patterns. At this moment, it was sprawled out, sleeping. Its mouth was open, and there was lava-like saliva dripping onto the ground from it. The Lava Beast King. Its aura was extremely powerful. Even at such a far distance, its aura caused Ling Han to shudder, with his hair on ends. The late stage of the high extreme peak stage, or it might have even reached consummate level. Subjected to Ling Han's stare, this Beast King suddenly woke up with a start. Snapping open its eyes, it raised its head and swept its surroundings with a suspicious gaze. However, after completing its scan, it did not discover anything off, and lowered its head and once again began sleeping. Hoo hoo hoo. Its snores were thunderous. Ling Han appeared out of the Black Tower, and wondered how he was supposed to grab the mountain river stone. Was it possible to obtain it through force? Ling Han estimated his own battle prowess. Presently, his cultivation level was close to the peak of the low extreme, whereas his strength was close to reaching the peak of the medium extreme, and when he used secret techniques, his battle prowess could reach the peak of the medium extreme. He had yet to reach the high extreme. Yet the other party was very likely in existence on the consummate level, and had formed 4 mountain rivers. Merely in terms of strength, it would absolutely crush him. No matter how tough his physique was, if the difference in strength was too large, then he would not be able to get close enough even with the indestructible Heaven's Scroll to speed up his self-recovery. One hit, and he would be smacked onto the ground. If he approached rashly, he would only be thrashed for nothing. Most importantly, where was the mountain river stone? What meaning would there be in beginning the fight when he had yet to figure that out? A thought flashed in Ling Han's mind. What if he summoned the annihilating dragon star arrow? Though the battle prowess of this Beast King was extremely frightening, it was so laid back that it seemed like it did not have much vigilance. It was practically a live target. Let's test it out. He drew out his bow, activated the ultimate arrow, and used the Eye of Truth to find the weakness of this Beast King at the same time. Yet the Lava Beast King suddenly stood up. True, it was lazy, but this kind of powerful existence always had an instinctive reaction to danger. If another being in close proximity bore killing intent towards it, it would be able to sense it, what more when it was being targeted by an arrow. Tong tong tong. It immediately ran in the direction of the cave's opening. The patterns on its skin glowed and interwove with the divine patterns of fire, capable of melting gold and erasing bones. But when it ran to the cave's opening, it did not discover anything. This made it very confused. It had clearly sensed a powerful danger, so why did it not find anything? Could it be that it had played too madly with a small beast the day before and had not rested enough, so its senses had malfunctioned today? It slowly walked back, and sprawled back down to sleep. There! However, in the Black Tower, Ling Han's eyes lit up. There was an unusual stone underneath the Beast King. Unlike other stones that were bright crimson, this one was completely black. It was practically the only spot of green among millions of flowers. That was how obvious it was. And on this stone, there were 7 crimson-red stones scattered all over. Even at such distance, Ling Han was sure that those were mountain river stones. Moreover, they were mountain river stones with a unique elemental alignment, and possessed the power of flames. Now he knew where the mountain river stones were, but the question of how to obtain it was a big problem. Let's continue. Ling Han exited the Black Tower, and once again summoned a bow and circulated the annihilating dragon star arrow. The Beast King was again startled, and ran out to investigate. However, it naturally returned without success. Ling Han began playing a game of hide and seek with it. After more than a dozen times, this Beast King was practically doubting life itself. When Ling Han once again summoned the annihilating dragon star arrow, it merely raised its head to cast a lazy look, but did not get up. The feeling of danger disappeared again. The Beast King sprawled out to sleep. It could almost confirm that this had to be its misconception. It had surely played around too much. Once, twice and thrice. The Beast King's reaction became more and more careless, and in the end, it couldn't even be bothered to raise its head, and merely blinked its eyes in reaction. And right at this moment, Ling Han released a fatal strike. Xiao, the divine arrow shot out, as quick as lightning. The Beast King suddenly opened its eyes, and when it discovered that rapid stream of light approaching, it was finally greatly alarmed, and hurriedly began to get up. The patterns all over its body began glowing, and interwove to become flames. However, it was too late. If it had reacted when Ling Han drew back the bowstring, then with its powerful abilities, it would have definitely been capable of making full preparation. Without speaking of anything else, merely with its whole body of glowing patterns interweaving to become flames, perhaps the whole arrow would be directly melted, becoming a pool of liquid metal. Yet now that the annihilating dragon star arrow was shot, it still wanted to dodge. What a joke. Perhaps cultivators of the Sun-Moon tier would be able to, but this Beast King definitely was not. Pooh! The black arrow had already shot into the eye of the Beast King, and even the tail of the arrow had disappeared. The Beast King released a furious roar of pain. Pa! The divine patterns on the arrow exploded, forming a terrifying destructive ability. A quarter of this Beast King's head had exploded into nothing, and blood spurted out in all directions. A few broken bones could still be seen. It was really unlucky. If it had not opened its eyes, then the eyelid would have at least provided some protection, but now, it was its eye itself that took on the might of this arrow directly. While it was a Beast King in the consummate level of Mountain River tier, so what? However, the Beast King was still the Beast King, after all. Even after taking a shot like that, it did not die. Its single remaining eye focused on Ling Han. It had finally discovered the culprit that had injured it. It roared in fury, and moving its 4 short legs, charged towards Ling Han. Hong long long. Every step it took shook the ground so much that it seemed like the entire cave was trembling. All the patterns covering its body were completely lit, and interwove to become divine flame, enough to turn a cultivator in the low extreme or even the medium extreme into ash. I'm not playing with you anymore. In a flash, Ling Han's figure had instantly disappeared from sight. Where was he? The Beast King pounced and searched endlessly, its single eye shining with a frighteningly menacing light, yet it did not find anything. It was incredibly furious. A quarter of its head had been destroyed. It was a great injury, which caused it to feel both agony and fury. But what could it do if it could not find the culprit? After searching crazily for a while, it could only retreat back. It had to get its injuries under control as soon as possible. Otherwise, its life would be in danger. However, just at that moment, that despicable human appeared once more. Another arrow was notched, and he was planning to shoot it again. Instantly, all the hair on the Beast King was raised on end if it had any. It quickly stood up, with divine flames interweaving all over its body, and assumed a defensive stance. Ling Han was only putting on an act. He had just shot out an annihilating dragon star arrow, and all the stamina in his whole body was expended, so how could he fire another shot now? But it was fine even if he couldn't. This Beast King had already become easily frightened due to its past experiences. Just acting like he was going to shoot was enough to scare it to death. Meanwhile, Ling Han was using true origin stones to recover his origin power. Stamina could recover slowly on its own, and though there were no means to speed up the recovery rate, it recovered at a much faster pace than origin power. At most, in a few dozen breaths' time, he would be able to recover to his prime condition. But what about that Beast King? The moment it wanted to heal its injuries, Ling Han would pretend that he was about to shoot an arrow as a scare tactic, causing it to immediately feel alarmed as if it had seen a great enemy. The more he repeated it, the more blood it was losing, and the worse its condition was becoming. Chapter 970. Greater danger lies behind. It was a Beast King in the consummate level, but it had just advanced into this cultivation level. Though it had formed 4 mountains, it merely had 3 rivers, and the 4th mountain was clearly slightly smaller. In this mystery realm, consummate level was practically invincible, but at present, this powerful Beast King was being played around with in the palm of Ling Han's hand. It was only a breath away from death. After Ling Han had drawn the bowstring for who knew how many times to threaten it, this Beast King was already too weak to activate the divine flame. Its whole body was sprawled on the ground, and it merely released angered growls from its nostrils. However, its intimidation aura had already ebbed away like waves. The Beast King, at this time, was like a phoenix that had lost its feathers, no match for even a chicken. However, as the saying went, a centipede died, but never fell down. What more when it was a consummate-level Beast King. Its battle prowess was possibly 2 or 3 stars higher than its actual cultivation level. As long as it had not breathed its last, one should not underestimate it. Ling Han did not make any rash moves. His stamina had already recovered completely, and his origin power was also close to complete recovery with the aid of true origin stones. Hence, he naturally would not mind wasting a bit more time on the Beast King. The Beast King was panting, its single eye still bearing a ferocious look, but its vitality was becoming dimmer and dimmer. How much longer would he have to wait? Half a day, a whole day, or 3 days? Even if such a powerful demonic beast was about to die, it could possibly take a considerable number of days to actually die. Ling Han did not have much patience. He feared he would be expelled by the mystery realm the moment time was up, and by then, the 7 mountain river stones underneath the beast would have nothing to do with him. He decided to take a risk. His confidence lay in his powerful physique and recovery abilities. He walked towards that Beast King. 7th uncle, this time, we've brought the Crimson Ground locking net. We will definitely be able to subdue that Beast King. In the Flame Cave, there were 4 people currently journeying towards the innermost depths of the cave. This group of theirs was considerably powerful. Any demonic beast they encountered would only be killed instantly under their combined forces, so there were almost no pauses in their advance. The clan has prepared more than 1,000 years for this, and finally successfully forged the Crimson Ground locking net. As long as it is in the net, it would be forcibly be suppressed onto a lower minor level. An old man smiled, stroking his beard. Among the 4 of them, only he had a head of white hair. The other 3 were all young men. However, their cultivation was not weak. The one with the lowest cultivation level was still in the late stage of the low extreme, while the remaining 2 were in the peak stage of the low extreme. Otherwise, they would not have been able to sweep aside all obstacles on their way here. If Ling Han saw them, he would realize that these 4 were from the Luo clan. Before entering the mystery realm, they had clearly exposed their killing intent. However, after entering the mystery realm, they appeared randomly in separate places, which gave them no opportunity to meet. Damn it, we did not encounter that ant from a small world all this while, a young man said suddenly. You don't have to take it to heart. Even if we did not encounter him, so be it. In any case, the Dark Knight Hall has already accepted the mission. That brat will definitely not be able to escape his death. The priority this time is to kill that Beast King in order to obtain the Flame Mountain River stones, the old man said seriously. Yes, the other 3 young men replied solemnly. Although this elder's talent was not high, and he only became a 4-star genius through secret techniques and could not possibly ever have any further room for improvement, his abilities were firmly above the mat, at least for now. Furthermore, he had sacrificed the little opportunity he initially possessed to advance for the sake of contributing to the clan, so he had to be respected. The old man nodded and said, "That Beast King is in existence at the peak stage of the high extreme. Even if it is weakened by a minor level, it is still at the peak stage of the medium extreme, and the lava beast by nature can use divine flame. The battle prowess of the Beast King should still reach the early stage of the high extreme, so we must not be careless. Rest assured, 7th uncle. We all have god tools in hand, which would be enough to raise our battle prowess by another star. As long as you tie down the Beast King and distract it, we will be able to deal it a severe injury and forcibly drag it to death," a young man said. "And what is important is this kind of determination." The old man was very pleased. Ling Han drew near, yet the Beast King did not have much of a reaction. It was as if it was so severely wounded that it did not even have the strength to raise a paw. If you keep on playing dead, then I will directly deal with you." Ling Han concentrated his divine sense, and suddenly delivered an attack with the 7-kill subduing soul technique. It was not of much use before, as the Beast King's cultivation level was too high, so its divine sense was naturally superior to his. If he'd used a spiritual attack against it, he would likely have been thrown back with an agonizing pain in his head as if it was about to break apart. But it was different now. This Beast King was already at the end of its rope, so its divine sense was already in extreme decline. Hong! The Beast King suddenly raised its claws and smacked out towards Ling Han. This strike was still extremely forceful and fierce. Haha, I scammed you all the time, so I'll take a strike from you head-on once so that you will not feel wronged in death. Ling Han did not duck into the Black Tower. Instead, he delivered a full-force strike to counter the attack. Wang, his palms shone with brilliant golden light, and Earth Overturning Seal activated, forming multiple divine patterns on his palms. Pang! He took the attack from the Beast King head-on, and his whole figure was instantly sent flying. The strength of both sides was completely on different levels. Wah! Ling Han's body slammed into the cave wall, and bounced back. He sprawled down on the ground, opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. He wiped the corner of his lips, and felt as if all the blood in his body was boiling, which was a great suffering. As expected of the consummate level, your strength is truly amazing. Ling Han got back up. Pa pa pa, a few dislocated bones instantly popped back into place. His physique was really too powerful. Even the strike from a consummate-level demonic beast was unable to break his bones, and merely dislocated some of his joints. Of course, this was also because the Beast King was severely injured, and could not possibly release its most powerful strength. The Beast King's single eye stared at him. Its gaze was filled with shock, confusion, and fury, but there was also a sliver of defeat. Its full power blow still could not kill this human. Dying in the hands of this human, there was no injustice. In the first place, it was already dying, and after forcing releasing a full power blow, it was adding salt to the wound. It could not even manage to open its eye anymore, and its single eye slowly closed again. I shall send you on the last lap of your journey. Ling Han shot out an attack with the 7-kill subduing soul technique, and stunned this Beast King, taking it into the Black Tower. He would use his supreme power to kill this Beast King so it needed not suffer any further. Ling Han's gaze turned towards the 7 mountain river stones on the black stone, and a smile floated on his lips. After searching so hard and for so long, it was finally time for him to reap his rewards. His sensitive divine sense had discovered an odd movement, and he immediately turned around. Xiao 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 xiao. 4 people suddenly pounced inside through the entrance, 1 old and 3 younger. Each one of them held onto the corner of a huge net, and with the stimulation of their origin power, caused this giant net to exude a crimson light. They were naturally the 4 members of the Luo clan. They had taken out the crimson ground locking net at the entrance, and activated it ahead of time. Then they leaped in, wanting to ambush that Beast King and use this divine net to entrap it. But only after they suddenly rushed in did they discover that there was no sign of the Beast King. Instead, there was merely a young man staring at them. It's you! The 4 suddenly recognized him. Wasn't this precisely that ant from a small world? Ha 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 ha, this is really traveling far and wide to look for you, only to find you easily. One of the young men laughed loudly. Chapter 971. Trapped. Mountain River Stones. Meanwhile, the eyes of the old man from the Luo clan were burning with desire as he stared at the 7 mountain river stones. There were a whopping 7 special attribute mountain river stones. If these were all used on a single individual, the Luo clan would be able to raise a super genius. That was unlike him, who could only remain at the low extreme forever even though he was a 4-star genius. He was merely a freak, who had been forcefully raised specifically for exploring this heavenly sea mystery realm. In this world that was brimming with immortal-level cultivators, what good was a battle prowess at the peak stage of the medium extreme? What the Luo clan needed was someone with a battle prowess at the sun-moon tier, or perhaps even the heavenly body tier. 7 special attribute mountain river stones could elevate one's battle prowess by 1 star. His was a certainty when going from 1 star to 2 stars. However, it was less certain when trying to go from 2 stars to 3 stars, or from 3 stars to 4 stars. Naturally, it was harder to advance the more powerful one already was. To 4-star geniuses, 7 mountain river stones might not even be enough to elevate their battle prowess by half a star. Regardless, special attribute mountain river stones were precious treasure, and also the main objective of their journey. The 4 people from the Luo clan didn't wonder where the Beast King had gone, nor did they think about why Ling Han had appeared here. They didn't care. How mean, retrieve the mountain river stones, the old man from the Luo clan instructed. Luo Haomin hurriedly nodded.
Yes, seventh uncle.
A look of excitement spread across his face as he walked toward the pitch-black boulder. He was given priority nurturing in the Luo clan, and had received such nurturing 1,000 years or so before Luo Ba and Luo Lai. In terms of talent, however, he was actually slightly inferior to Luo Lai. Among those who received priority nurturing, his importance was also ranked behind Luo Ba. However, Luo Ba was already dead now, so his position naturally shifted upward. He had the right to obtain these special attribute mountain river stones. Don't stick your hand out to take what's not yours. That's the behavior of thieves and bandits, Ling Han said with a smile. His body flashed away at a speed faster than Luo Haomin's. Since I'm here, what right do you have to keep them? The old man from the Luo clan sneered. He let go of the huge net and lunged toward Ling Han. He didn't take Ling Han seriously at all. Ling Han was merely at the Shattering Void Tier 1, and it was meaningless even if he was invincible in his own tier. After all, that was only limited to the level of mere mortals. Against someone of the immortal level, such cultivation was truly nothing to behold. Ling Han didn't retrieve his bow. Instead, he used his body as a bow and his origin power as an arrow as he fired a shot toward Luo Haomin. What level had his power reached right now? Near the peak stage of the medium extreme. Thus, even though he didn't use a bow and an arrow, the might of his annihilating dragon star arrow still reached the peak stage of the medium extreme. Luo Haomin also didn't pay Ling Han much heed. After all, he still had his seventh uncle supporting him from behind. He was only focused on the 7 mountain river stones. This was an incredible amount of wealth, and truth be told, he couldn't earn this much even if he was sold. He completely ignored Ling Han's attack, and continued dashing forward. How tremendously quick was the annihilating dragon star arrow. Pooh! The origin power arrow instantly pierced Luo Haomin's back and exited through his chest. The origin power of the arrow was almost exhausted, and the entire arrow immediately vanished into thin air. How is this possible? He had already caught up to Ling Han, and he roared in anger as he threw a fist toward him. You killed someone from my clan, so it's only fair if I kill you too. Die, he bellowed. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, You're not powerful enough. Then, he also raised a fist, and swung it toward the old man from the Luo clan. Pang! The old man from the Luo clan was instantly sent flying by the impact of the strike. He was indeed at the peak stage of the low extreme, and was indeed a 4-star genius. However, this didn't mean his power could definitely reach the level of the medium extreme. Wasn't he seeking death by fighting Ling Han head-on? Ling Han lowered his fist, and calmly continued toward the pitch-black boulder. The 3 people from the Luo clan all wore expressions of shock and disbelief. Ling Han had merely been at the Shattering Void tier when he'd entered this mystery realm. They were unable to fathom how he had suddenly become strong enough to send a powerful cultivator at the peak stage of the medium extreme of the mountain river tier flying after only 10 days or so. Mountain river stones. The old man from the Luo clan suddenly came to a realization. Only mountain river stones could allow cultivators at the Shattering Void tier to easily advance into the mountain river tier. Moreover, their cultivation would advance rapidly, and they wouldn't come across any bottlenecks before the peak stage of the low extreme. Gasp! How many mountain river stones did this brat obtain? The 2 youths from the Luo clan also realized this fact. Raging jealousy welled up in their hearts. They had already entered this mystery realm dozens of times, yet they had only managed to obtain 3 mountain river stones in total. Moreover, those 3 were just ordinary mountain river stones. Activate the Crimson Ground Locking Net. Capture him. The old man from the Luo clan didn't dare underestimate Ling Han anymore. This ant from the small world had already been incredibly powerful at the Shattering Void tier. Now that he had reached the mountain river tier, his abilities before he reached the medium extreme would be on par with cultivators who were truly at the mountain river tier even if he had only ranked up thanks to the effects of the mountain river stones. One had to realize that this brat had passed 8 levels of the Academy's assessment when he entered the Scarlet Heaven Academy. He had the potential of a 4-star genius. The 3 people spread the huge net toward Ling Han. Ling Han immediately put the 7 mountain river stones away. He definitely couldn't allow them to be snatched from him. However, after putting them away, there was already no time for him to dodge. As a result, he was covered by the net. Ling Han was slightly astonished as the huge net radiated with a power that forcefully suppressed his cultivation level. He was already close to the peak stage of the low extreme, yet right now, his cultivation level was just at the early stage of the low extreme. Ha ha ha! The three people from the Luo clan roared with laughter. This was the Crimson Ground Locking Net, and it was forged specifically to target the Lava Beast King. The Luo clan had poured a huge amount of resources into forging it. However, this would all be worth it as long as they could capture that Beast King. After all, if they succeeded, they would be able to obtain an endless supply of special attribute mountain river stones this time, then the next time, and yet the next time afterwards. Even the Beast King was no match for this net, much less Ling Han. Now that he was inside the net, he was nothing more than a trapped beast. Brat, hand over the mountain river stones. If I'm in a good mood, I might even gift you a swift death, one of the youths said. His name was Luo Jian. Humph. He dared to kill members of the Luo clan, so it's not excessive even if we dice his body into 10,000 pieces. It's a shame we can't do this publicly, the old man from the Luo clan said regretfully. They could kill him in this mystery realm as doing so would be relatively obscure and hard to verify. However, publicly killing a student of the Scarlet Heaven Academy. They could try if they didn't want to stay in the Chaotic Star's majestic empire anymore.
Then we'll slowly refine him.
A cruel smile appeared on Luo Jian's face. He knew that Ling Han's physique was incredibly tough. It was on par with a level 1 godly metal. Die! The old man from the Luo clan retrieved a sword that had numerous veined patterns on its body. It emanated a brilliant glow as he activated it. This was a level 1 god tool, and the clan had only bestowed it to him for the sake of this journey into the mystery realm. He raised the sword and stabbed it toward Ling Han's heart. Chapter 972. I merely have a spatial god tool. Pooh! The tip of the sword pierced through the net, aiming at Ling Han's chest. The cruel smile on the old man's face instantly transformed into a look of astonishment. His sword hadn't been able to penetrate Ling Han's body. Ling Han cracked a smile and said, "Sorry for cultivating my physique to such a powerful state. I've disappointed you." Fuck! So smug. The old man from the Luo clan continued to stab with his sword, yet his attacks were naturally useless against Ling Han's powerful physique. How could he possibly wound Ling Han? The old man wore a look of shock and disbelief. They had already used the Crimson Ground Locking Net, yet they were still unable to dispose of this ant from the small world. I won't hold back if you continue stabbing at me. Ling Han chuckled. Humph. You're trapped by the Crimson Ground Locking Net, so how are you going to escape? The old man forcefully calmed himself down. Even the Lava Beast King, which was at the peak stage of the high extreme, couldn't break free from this net, much less Ling Han, who was only near the peak stage of the low extreme. Otherwise, wouldn't the Luo clan be too foolish to spend so many resources? Hee. There are countless underground lava lakes in this place. Moreover, they're all extremely hot, and they're even capable of melting godly metal. Why don't we toss him into one? Luo Jian suggested. Brilliant idea! Brilliant! The old man from the Luo clan clapped in excitement. The three people all looked at Ling Han and hoped to put some pressure onto him. In reality, they were only making empty threats. What would they do if the Crimson Ground Locking Net melted after they tossed Ling Han into a lava lake? If the net melted and Ling Han also turned into dust, then wouldn't the Luo clan have suffered a double loss? Ling Han grinned and said, "Are you guys trying to scare me? Heh, I can't be bothered messing around anymore." His figure flashed as he entered the Black Tower. Then, after a split second, he immediately exited again. His action was so rapid that those who didn't have a keen eye definitely wouldn't have been able to catch it. The huge net slammed into the ground. What? The three people's eyes bulged in disbelief. This was completely beyond their comprehension. How could something like this happen? He escaped from the Crimson Ground Locking Net that easily? How did you do that? They stared at Ling Han in absolute shock. They had to ask this question regardless of whether Ling Han answered or not. Otherwise, their shock would definitely continue to chew away at their minds. "Oh," Ling Han said casually, "I have a spatial god tool. Just then, I entered it momentarily, then came back out. Your net lost its target, so it naturally fell to the ground. That's all there is to it. Spatial God Tool. The three people from the Luo clan almost bit their tongues off when they heard this. Precious treasure. It's definitely a precious treasure. Thump, thump, thump. Their hearts beat in excitement. How was this ant from the small world in possession of such a valuable treasure? Well, this wasn't important. What was important was that this treasure now belonged to the Luo clan. Ling Han raised his fist and chuckled. Do you think I'll let you live after learning of my secret? You've even set your eyes on my treasure. There's definitely something wrong with your brains. The three people shuddered. This ant from the small world was far too unpredictable. Not only did he possess a powerful tier-surpassing battle prowess, but even his physique alone was powerful enough to make one feel despair. Perhaps only demonic beasts at the high extreme would pose a threat to him. Flee! The three people immediately turned around to run. As long as they left this mystery realm, the Luo clan would definitely do everything in its ability to capture Ling Han, even if it meant having to flee from the chaotic star's majestic empire. This was a treasure that could only be forged by great elites of the Genesis tier, so perhaps they would even be able to obtain the method for reaching the Genesis tier. There was nothing wrong with this line of thought. After all, how could an ant from the small world possibly have become so strong? As long as the Luo clan could endure for a few thousand years, there would eventually come a day when the entire joint peace planet submitted to their prowess. Even the Empress of the chaotic star's majestic empire would become their plaything. One had to admit, the Empress of the chaotic star's majestic empire was far too enchanting, and the minds of these people would involuntarily wander to her even when they lusted in their minds. Ling Han unleashed his 7-kill subduing soul technique, and Luo Jian instantly fell into daze. Then, he was dragged into the Black Tower and killed. Immediately afterward, Ling Han unleashed his annihilating dragon star arrow. Whoosh! A dazzling streak of light flashed past and struck another youth of the Luo clan, causing him to shriek in pain as he collapsed to the ground in agony. Xiao! Ling Han charged toward the old man. Fear gripped at the old man's heart as he glanced backward. Brat, you're the enemy of our Luo clan, he shouted. What? You still wanted to drink tea with me? Ling Han sneered. You're not worthy. He drew his bow and fired another arrow. This wasn't the ultimate arrow, yet with his current strength, it was still extremely terrifying. Most importantly, it was extremely quick. The old man from the Luo clan hurriedly tried to dodge. There were innumerable rock columns and corners in this cave, so there was no shortage of locations where he could hide. How long can you hide? Ling Han continued to fire arrow after arrow. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Sparks flew all over the place as the origin power arrows collided with the rock columns. Fortunately, the environment here was extremely stable. Otherwise, the rock columns would be directly punctured when struck by the arrows. The old man didn't dare appear before Ling Han. This made him feel extremely distressed. He was a 4-star genius at the peak stage of the low extreme, theoretically speaking. He was invincible among the cultivators in this mystery realm. Now, however, he didn't even have the right to battle Ling Han head-on. Why is it like this? Ling Han held onto his sword as he walked around. Old dog, come and fight me. The old man hurriedly started fleeing again upon seeing that Ling Han had stopped shooting. However, Ling Han unleashed his 7-kill subduing soul technique and instantly sent pain rippling through his mind, causing him to stumble. As expected of a cultivator at the peak stage of the low extreme and someone who had tempered his body hundreds of times with secret techniques, the old man's spirit was extremely stable. Unlike the youth, he wasn't stunned. This was also in part due to the relatively long distance between him and Ling Han. Otherwise, the effects of the technique would definitely have been more powerful. Ling Han caught up and slashed with his sword. It was also a level 1 god tool, and after he activated it, its divine patterns lit up and exuded an impressive might. The old man had no desire to skirmish with Ling Han. He only had one thought right now, and that was to leave the mystery realm and report the secret of Ling Han's spatial god tool to the Luo clan. Ling Han extended his hand and activated his divine patterns of gravity. The old man from the Luo clan instantly stumbled and almost fell to the ground. Having gravity suddenly change while one was sprinting at full speed was extremely fatal. Ling Han immediately caught up and slashed with his sword. There was a brilliant flash. The mysterious 3000. The old man had no choice but to turn around and parry with his divine sword. His battle prowess wasn't worse than Ling Han's, and with his full-strength strike, he wasn't suppressed by Ling Han at all. Rather, he even enjoyed a slight advantage. After all, he was a specialized lackey whom the Luo clan had raised using a huge amount of resources. If he couldn't even resist for a while, then he would be far too trashy. You only forcefully advance to the immortal level by using mountain river stones, and you don't know how to control regulations at all. The old man was extremely ferocious after being forced into a battle. Every strike from his sword was precise and deadly. Ling Han smiled and said, "Regulations are only a part of battle prowess. However, battle prowess isn't merely as simple as utilizing regulations." He continued to harass the old man with his divine patterns of gravity, forcing him to continuously adjust his movement techniques. Chapter 973. I'll grant you a life of glory. When elites fought, a difference of 1 millimeter was the difference between life and death. The turn of events was mainly due to Ling Han's strength being far above that of the old man from the Luo clan. As a result, the effects were obvious when he activated the power of his divine patterns of gravity. If it weren't for his superior strength, the results definitely wouldn't have been so stark. As the saying went, enough power would defeat a myriad of techniques. When one's power reached a certain level, all kinds of techniques would become meaningless. Ling Han's power wasn't that impressive yet, but it was still more than enough to affect the movements of the old man from the Luo clan. Detestable brat. The old man had already been cut several times, and he appeared extremely disheveled as his head of white hair billowed in the air. You've offended the Luo clan, and you'll definitely die a horrid death. Not only you, but even your parents will be slaughtered. Your women will become playthings, and your descendants will be slaves for all eternity. The Luo clan has existed for millions of years, and it's not a force that a bastard from a small world can sway or challenge. Ling Han's expression instantly became cold. What a toxic tongue. He unleashed his 10,000 techniques return to one, and a sword ray instantly transformed into a thick streak that slashed toward the old man. When he was in the shattering void tier, he still needed to condense his origin power for a short moment before being able to unleash the 10,000 techniques return to one. Now, however, he could use it at will. What did this mean? This meant that the 10,000 techniques return to one already didn't consume much of his origin power. Thus, he could unleash it as he desired. At the same time, this also meant that the power of this technique was relatively weaker. There was no helping it, however, as this was only a sword technique of the Sun-Moon tier. How powerful could it be? Anyhow, the might of this strike was still impressive, and it raised Ling Han's battle prowess to the level of 5 stars. Pang, pang, pang. The old man's expression changed drastically after being struck numerous times. "Why, you're a 5-star genius," he stammered in astonishment. He was a sub-minor level above Ling Han, and was also a 4-star genius himself. However, he was only evenly matched, perhaps even at a slight disadvantage when facing Ling Han right now. Thus, there was only one explanation. That was, his opponent was a 5-star genius. This was far too frightening. Even the left and right ministers, as well as the 7 generals, were only 4-star geniuses. Only the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire had reached the legendary level of 5 stars. This kind of enemy. He definitely had to annihilate him in the cradle. Otherwise, the Luo clan would be condemned to eternal damnation. 5 stars. Ling Han scoffed. He didn't unleash the ultimate arrow of the annihilating dragon star arrow to frighten the old man, or else it was even possible that he would faint in terror. However, secret techniques were all restricted by tiers. For example, the 3 styles of black origin that he was using now could raise his battle prowess by 1 star. When he reached the heavenly body tier, though, the might of this technique would certainly fall dramatically, and definitely not have the same effects as now. Thus, only power was eternal, and only power was hard power. Ling Han nodded in his mind. It had been a wise decision to break through only after raising his power to 20 stars of the shattering void tier. He continued to harass the old man with his divine patterns of gravity, causing him to trip and stumble all over the place. As a result, the battle prowess of the old man took a huge hit. Raising one's battle prowess wasn't the only way to defeat enemies. Weakening the enemies was also a good tactic. For example, hadn't the 4 people from the Luo clan been planning on weakening the Lava Beast King with the Crimson Ground locking net? They wanted to drag their opponent's battle prowess down to the same level as them, and then use their abundant experience to defeat them. However, they were unaware that the Lava Beast King had already reached the consummate level. Even with the Crimson Ground locking net, it was still more likely that they would be defeated. The old man from the Luo clan received more and more wounds under Ling Han's relentless attacks. Eventually, Ling Han's sword pierced through his heart.
He grabbed the blade of the sword as hatred seeped from his eyes.
Ha 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 ha. Being a 5-star genius is not necessarily a good thing. If others learn of this, countless people will target and try to kill you. I'll wait for you in the netherworld.
He drew his last breath after uttering this threat.
Ling Han lightly shook his sword and placed it back into the Black Tower.
There's no need for you to worry, he said softly.
When I'm strong enough, I'll obliterate the Luo clan first and let them accompany you. He retrieved the spatial spirit tools of the 4 Luo clan members.
There were several hundred true origin stones as well as an ordinary mountain river stone inside.
He shook his head in disappointment. He himself already had 10 special attribute mountain river stones. He started refining the Crimson Ground locking net after returning to the depths of the cave. It was a decent item that could weaken the enemy's cultivation level by quite a significant amount. The only uncertainty was the limit of its abilities. Would it work against elites of the Sun-Moon tier? With this, I can easily suppress even great elites of the high extreme. Ling Han turned his attention to the pitch-black boulder. This boulder stuck out like a sore thumb in this environment, so it naturally attracted his attention. Moreover, why did the Lava Beast King lie on top of it? Why did mountain river stones appear on top of it? He tried to lift the stone, but was unable to. Is it fused to the ground, or does it have an astonishing weight? Ling Han tried to wrap his divine sense around the boulder. As long as this succeeded, he would be able to bring the boulder into his Black Tower regardless of how much it weighed. The environment here was harsh, though Ling Han's physique was completely unaffected by it.
However, his divine sense hadn't reached such a powerful level yet, and he instantly felt a sharp pain when it came into contact with the scorching lava in the depths underground.
He immediately felt like retracting his divine sense. However, Ling Han forcefully suppressed this urge, and continued to expand his divine sense. His divine sense spread out bit by bit. After 30 minutes, a smile finally spread across his face. Wang! The pitch-black boulder instantly vanished.
He peered over, and found that a 21-meter-deep crater had already appeared in the ground.
There was a swirl of black at the bottom. It was unclear whether it was water, metal, or something else entirely. What was clear was that it was frighteningly profound. Ling Han tossed a rock into the crater. Pa! The rock instantly exploded into smithereens. Ling Han was stunned. One had to realize that the composition of the mountains and rocks here was relatively stable. At least, he could only create some sparks when he struck them with his full strength. Now, however, the rock had exploded on impact. Its destructive power is terrifying. Wang! An astonishing sight suddenly appeared at this moment. A human face floated up from under the black surface, yet the black surface appeared to possess startling flexibility. It continued to stretch further and further, yet it didn't break no matter how far it stretched. Although the face appeared normal in every aspect, it had a nose, a mouth, and eyes. It was far too large. How large was the black boulder from before? This face was only a tiny bit smaller than it. It was larger than a manhole cover, and it was hard to fathom just how astonishing the true size of this person's body was. Even though they were separated by a layer of something, Ling Han could still sense the formidable aura that face was exuding. This feeling almost caused his soul to tremble. So powerful. This person has definitely surpassed the Sun-Moon tier, and perhaps even the Heavenly Body tier. Ling Han suddenly came to a realization. That black boulder wasn't placed here merely for its looks. Rather, it was placed here to suppress this cage or passageway. After pushing up around 9 meters or so, the face finally reached its limit, and was unable to advance any further. The face smiled and started to speak. However, no sound traveled out. After a short moment, however, a voice suddenly sounded in Ling Han's mind. Lowly human, help me open this passageway, and I'll grant you a life of glory. Ling Han chuckled and said, "Is this how you ask for help?" Chapter 974. Demon Master Zhen Yi. Ling Han didn't possess the ability to make his divine sense penetrate the black surface. It was a surface that could easily shatter the rocks here, and his divine sense would definitely be obliterated if it came into contact with it. From this, it could be seen just how much more powerful than him the person on the opposite end was. However, that person couldn't cross over to his side, or else they wouldn't have tried to entice him to begin with.
Lowly human, do you know who I am?
The face opened its mouth to speak, but his voice only traveled into Ling Han's mind after a short moment.
Open the passageway for me, and I'll grant you a country to rule.
Ling Han was extremely interested in this person's identity.
Oh, who are you?
His voice and divine sense were unable to travel to the opposite end, yet the person opposite him was far too powerful, and they were able to discern his words. I'm one of the most powerful people in the world. You may refer to me as Demon Master Zhen Yi. Ling Han was startled and said, You're from the Netherworld. Generally speaking, only beings from the Netherworld would refer to themselves as demons. In the Netherworld, the term demon wasn't derogatory. Rather, it was a symbol of power, and those with the title of demon were treated like gods. So, what rank was Demon Master? Ling Han wasn't sure, but he knew that Demon Master Zhen Yi was potentially more powerful than the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. According to legends, this mystery realm was created by a great elite of the Genesis tier. Thus, it was extremely likely that this location was the weak point between the immortal realm and the Netherworld. It could potentially be opened up and transformed into a passageway between the two realms. If that's the case, then is this black surface the barrier between the immortal realm and the Netherworld?
Ha 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 ha.
Correct. I'm an elite who can command seas and waves in the Netherworld. Human, hurry up and assist me in opening a passageway. I can grant you the identity of a demon servant and even bestow you with supreme demonic arts. Demon Master Zhen Yi tempted. Have you become stupid from practicing demonic arts? Ling Han derided. I think it's best if you stay on that side.
Who, man?
Demon Master Zhen Yi roared. This barrier can't hold me back much longer, and it's only a matter of hundreds or perhaps thousands of years. I gave you a chance to obtain eons of glory, yet you foolishly rejected me. When I break out, I'll definitely toss you into a demonic prison and have you suffer unbearable torture.
I'll wait for you.
Ling Han smiled and said, Also, what kind of demon master are you? You're actually threatening me, a person who's only at the lowly rank of the mountain river tier. I feel so honored. Demon Master Zhen Yi was rendered speechless. If he wasn't in such a bind, how would he need a cultivator of the mountain river tier to help him?
He humphed and said, Human, this is your last chance.
Don't ruin your own future. After learning of this person's identity, how could Ling Han still help him? He turned his attention to the internal world of the Black Tower, where he could see a series of extremely complicated divine patterns on the bottom of the black boulder. No wonder it was able to suppress this place. Ling Han didn't dare be too greedy. With a single thought, the black boulder materialized in the air and fell toward the crater. Fury spread across Demon Master Zhen Yi's face. However, his expression was quickly blocked by the black boulder.
Pang!
The black boulder crashed down and forcefully pushed Demon Master Zhen Yi back down. The crater instantly disappeared from sight.
No!
Demon Master Zhen Yi's voice reverberated in Ling Han's mind. However, it was abruptly cut off after a short while. However, if it was presented as a mystery realm that couldn't be entered, people would perhaps try everything in their power to break in. After all, humans had strange reasonings, and they were hell-bent on entering the places that forbid entry. Besides, limiting the opening time to once per decade and the highest rank to the low extreme of the mountain river tier, this place wouldn't be affected much anyway. Ling Han was a special case. As the saying went, diversion was better than obstruction. Right now, everyone's attention was focused on the mountain river stones, so they naturally wouldn't pay attention to what this mystery realm was suppressing. However, this wasn't a permanent solution, and the barrier would eventually be shattered one day. Ling Han started to leave the cave. He had raked in a huge amount of benefits this time, obtaining a whopping 8 mountain river stones, 7 of which were special attribute mountain river stones. In addition, he had also obtained some spiritual meat, which he could use when he attempted to break through to the immortal level of body arts after getting back. He came across a few people on his way out. They were naturally people who were looking for treasures. They were extremely wary of him, and hurriedly walked off after passing by his side. Who would dare to relax their guard in this place? After a few hours, Ling Han finally arrived at the mouth of the gigantic cave. Two women were sitting next to each other on a boulder nearby. Both were stunningly beautiful. One was charming in a pure and naive way, while the other was enchanting in a seductive way. The styles of their beauty were completely different. They were none other than Xue Yanyu and Hu Feiyun. Ling Han, you finally came back out. Sister Xue and I have been waiting for so long. Hu Feiyun immediately started to complain. Ling Han smiled at Xue Yanyu and said, "Sorry for making you worry." "I wasn't worried." Xue Yanyu was extremely stubborn, and she didn't admit her feelings no matter what. How was it? Did you kill that big ugly beast?" Hu Feiyun hurriedly asked. They had waited for a long time, so they naturally wanted to know the results. Xue Yanyu smiled and said, "That lava beast king is at the peak stage of the high extreme. How can it be killed? Being able to steal a mountain river stone is already extremely fortunate." Ling Han acted as if he were going to pinch Xue Yanyu's pretty face. "You think that lowly of your husband's abilities? How should I punish you?" Xue Yanyu hurriedly jumped aside. Her face flushed red and she scolded, "Pervert!" Ling Han chuckled and said, "This is perverted? You're still too innocent." Xue Yanyu couldn't help but recall the time he kissed her and the time something pushed against her. Her face felt hot, and her eyes rippled in an enchanting manner. Ling Han didn't dare keep looking. She was far too alluring, and he was truly afraid that he wouldn't be able to control himself and end up dragging her into the Black Tower, where he would reveal his demonic claws. "Where to now? Windmill Mountain is the closest to us." Ling Han looked at the map and pointed at some location. Windmill Mountain was another location that produced special attribute mountain river stones. It had a total of 18 peaks, which were organized in the shape of a windmill. Half was underground, and half was above the ground. It would rotate once every set period of time. When it rotated, it would produce terrifying winds that could easily tear cultivators to shreds. Thus, it was extremely difficult to obtain mountain river stones from this location. In fact, it was even more dangerous than the flame cave, and there was a risk of death at every turn. The special attribute mountain river stones it produced were of the metal element, and they would allow cultivators to obtain divine patterns of sharpness. These divine patterns could dramatically increase the damage of one's attacks. The group of three set off once again. However, before they had even made it halfway, they felt an indescribable power bearing down upon them. Shio! They vanished from where they were, and when they reappeared, they had already arrived in a land of wilderness. They weren't alone, and there were at least 1,000 others who were also looking around in confusion. Meanwhile, the mighty figures who had brought them here all started to leap over. Chapter 975. Startling a heavenly body tier cultivator. This slash was incredibly dazzling, and even the sun in the sky appeared dull in comparison. This wasn't a great elite of the sun-moon tier, but instead a great elite of the heavenly body tier. Ling Han's first reaction was to hide into the Black Tower. This wasn't a question of courage. Even though his physique was already on par with level 2 godly metal, it was still doubtless that he would turn into dust if he was struck by this slash. Wang! Right at this moment, however, a golden staff instantly descended from the sky and appeared before him. Streaks of divine patterns lit up on the staff, forming a golden zone that protected both him and Xue Yanyu and Hu Feiyun, who were standing behind him. Ding! The sword light slashed into the staff, sending up a long streak of sparks. Boom! A terrifying shock wave slid past the two sides and roof of the golden zone. These were streaks of sword patterns, and their vicious sharpness caused even the space to become unstable. It was as if space were going to tear apart. Humph! You dare attempt to kill my people before me? What courage! A mighty figure appeared before Ling Han and firmly grabbed the staff. A domineering aura was radiated from his body. He was Ding Lian, one of the 7 generals of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. He had a burly figure, and wore a crimson armor that was etched full of divine patterns. It was evidently a god tool.
His black hair billowed in the air, and coupled with the golden staff in his hand, he appeared like an invincible god of war.
One man guarded the pass, and even 10,000 wouldn't be able to break through. The most renowned battle of this elite was when he charged into the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire by himself and killed a traitor in the imperial capital of the enemy. In the end, he managed to successfully break back out and return to the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire. Of course, he also paid a huge price for it, and almost lost his life. He only recovered from his wounds after recuperating for several hundred years. According to rumors, he still suffered from the side effects, or else he might have already broken through to the medium extreme of the heavenly body tier. What a heavy accusation, Great General. He's merely a cultivator at the mountain river tier, and this king has already killed countless such cultivators. It's as simple as flicking my fingers. A middle-aged male slowly walked out. His skin was white, even a little transparent. King Enlon, do you want to battle against me? Ding Lian raised his staff and pointed it toward the middle-aged male. His fighting spirit soared, and the image of a star formed behind his back, exuding a might that desired to suppress the sky. If the target of his staff had been an ordinary person, perhaps their entire body would have already exploded. However, the middle-aged male whom he referred to as King Enlon was completely unaffected. He was a crowned king of the Jade Drop Majestic Empire, and not only was he powerful, but his status was also extremely lofty. Thus, he naturally wasn't afraid of Ding Lian.
This king wants the life of this brat, he said softly.
He must die today.
Ling Han chuckled coldly and said, Dare I ask, King Enlon, where I have offended you?
He originally didn't have the right to converse with elites of the heavenly body tier. However, this person was trying to kill him, so why would he care about such formalities? A look of disdain flashed across King Enlan's face. A mere ant of the mountain river tier actually dared to stand while speaking to him? What gall! He didn't reply, and merely stared at Ding Lian. Ding Lian's expression was cold. You think I don't know that this little buddy reached the Crimson Lake Island 3 times? Are you afraid that he'll become a huge threat to the Jade Drop Majestic Empire in the future? Haha. So what if that's the case? King Enlon didn't refute this claim. At their tier, it was beneath them to lie through their teeth.
He laughed and said, However, this brat merely has some potential.
Even if he can realize it, that's still a matter for at least tens of thousands of years later. Great General Ding, what's the point of protecting him? Well then, why is King Enlon so anxious to kill him? Ding Lian rebutted. Great General Ding, I've heard that you secretly have a crush on the Empress. Aren't you afraid that this prodigy is going to attract her attention, and perhaps even... Hee. King Enlon suddenly changed the topic. This was also Ding Lian's weakness. He was deep in love with the Empress of the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire, and this was a secret that was known by almost everyone.
However, his status was too lofty and his strength was too powerful, and the other person was more so the Empress of the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire.
As a result, not many dared to raise this matter. Now that King Enlon publicly spoke of this matter, Ding Lian's expression instantly became dark. A petrifying killing intent seeped out from his body. The Empress was his weakness, and she was also his reverse scale one.
She was more so a holy figure who couldn't be violated.
King Enlon, are you seeking death? Ding Lian was simmering with killing intent. He loved the Empress of the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire deeply, yet he was too ashamed of himself to pursue her. He believed that not a single male in the world was worthy of being with the Empress. Now, however, someone actually dared to disrespect the Empress. This made him seethe with rage. King Enlan's heart jolted. He hadn't envisioned that he would fail to drive a wedge between them, and instead would end up enraging Ding Lian. What an absolute backfire. This general also thinks that this brat is an eyesore. I also want to end his life. Another voice sounded, and a white-robed male suddenly appeared beside Ding Lian and King Enlon. His face was jade-like, and he possessed a rarely seen beauty.
However, his amorous eyes were far too lustful, and it was clear that he was someone who had tangled with many women.
Qi Feng, Ding Lian said in a deep voice. Qi Feng was a great general of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire. His status was equivalent to Ding Lian's, and his strength was also similar to Ding Lian's. When Ding Lian had charged into the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire, He was the main elite who had pursued him.
It was a pity that Ding Lian had succeeded in fleeing back to the chaotic star's majestic empire, however, and this was something that continued to weigh on his mind.
It could be said that they were old enemies. However, the three majestic empires hadn't gone to war for a long time, and thus they also hadn't been able to battle each other for a long time.
Ding Lian, hand that brat over.
Otherwise, I won't mind teaming up with King and Lan. Qi Feng threatened sinisterly. Ling Han was astonished.
He had merely reached the island 3 times, and now even elites of the heavenly body tier wanted to slay him on the spot.
We've truly drawn too much attention this time, Xue Yanyu whispered. After reaching the island twice, Zhao Luan also met with the threat of death when he left. However, he had already shot to fame at that time, so in addition to Great General Sha Jing, he also had Great General Zhao Jianbai protecting him in secret. It was thanks to them that the Eternity Sky and Jade Drop majestic empires weren't able to kill him. There was an anxious look on her face. Who would have imagined that Ling Han would be so freakish and reach the Crimson Lake Island 3 times? This was several times more freakish than Zhao Luan, and it would be strange if the other 2 majestic empires didn't try to kill him.
However, there was only one great general here in Ding Lian.
How could he possibly block 2 great elites of the heavenly body tier? King and Lan sneered coldly as he wrapped his arms before his chest.
Meanwhile, Ding Lian appeared to be in a wild state, and he brandished his staff for a moment before resting it onto his shoulder.
You 2 can try. However, I'm warning you, if one of you tries to battle me while the other attempts to kill him, don't blame me for being merciless. These youths that you brought over, none of them will survive. King and Lan and Great General Qi Feng's expressions changed drastically when they heard this. Meanwhile, the youths from the 2 other majestic empires also trembled in fear. These words were uttered by an elite of the heavenly body tier, so who would dare to treat it as an empty threat? Chapter 976. Intent Realm of Invincibility. Ding Lian was brimming with fighting spirit as he ferociously charged toward King and Lan and Qi Feng.
Dazzling golden light soared into the sky as he swiped with his staff, and it was as if he were about to shake the stars off from the sky.
Fortunately, this wasn't a small world.
Every star was potentially as big as the Joint Peace Planet, and they were all situated tremendously far away from here.
If they could truly be shaken from the sky, then wouldn't the Joint Peace Planet have already been destroyed countless times? Anyhow, the might of an elite at the heavenly body tier was still formidable. Once Ding Lian entered into action, the entire desolate plain tremored, and the vast stretch of land started to crack and fracture. The land was completely unable to withstand the might of a heavenly body tier cultivator. Everyone hurriedly retreated. Even elites at the Sun-Moon tier would be killed if they were caught up in this strike, let alone them, cultivators who were only at the Mountain River tier. Moreover, they were only at the low extreme of the Mountain River tier, and such a strike could obliterate them in the blink of an eye. King and Lan and Qi Feng moved together, and their fist and sword both struck toward Ding Lian's golden staff. Pang! A huge force instantly exploded outward when the fist and sword collided with the staff, and the zone that they were in was instantly enveloped by gold, white, and black light. A shock wave spread outward, and even those who had already retreated far into the distance were still violently shaken. 90% of people there started to vomit blood. When the light disappeared, everyone could see that Ding Lian still remained in his attacking posture. Meanwhile, King and Lan's sword and Qi Feng's fist also remained on the body of his staff. It was as if they had turned into stone statues. Let us fight in the sky to our heart's content. The 3 people soared into the sky, and immediately commenced an intense battle. Only elites at the heavenly body tier could wield the regulations of the immortal realm and fly through the skies. This time, their might climbed explosively, reaching a level more than 100 times stronger than before. It was evident that they had been worried about accidentally obliterating their own forces just then. Thus, they had all held back significantly. Boom! Bursts of light and shock waves ripped through the sky, and even the radiance of the sun became veiled and dim. Almost everyone was knocked off their feet, and only a measly few people could remain standing. Ling Han could only just see the battle between the 3 elites after activating his Eye of Truth. Their speed was incredible, and they continuously charged and slid past each other. Their actions far exceeded the limits of a Mountain River tier cultivator's sight. Ding Lian walked a path of dominance, and every strike from his staff was direct and without fussing. At his tier, there was already not much need for techniques anyway.
He was almost one with his staff arts, and the Tao of heaven and earth would naturally be imbued in all of his strikes.
As a result, his attacks were all extremely terrifying. However, he had two equally powerful opponents, with both Qifeng and King Enlon also being at the peak stage of the low extreme of the heavenly body tier. In fact, they were both 4-star geniuses as well, and neither of them was weaker than Ding Lian. Right now, Ding Lian was still evenly matched with them. However, how long could he last? Ling Han couldn't help but feel anxious. Once Ding Lian was defeated, the two elites would definitely turn their attention to him. Am I an easy target now? Ling Han was extremely pissed. However, he had no option but to admit that he was indeed an easy target right now. He was born in a small world, and he had only just advanced to the mountain river tier as well. So what if he was a 5 or 6-star genius? Any force here could bully him.
My strength is far from sufficient.
Ling Han's mind whirred. He had 8 mountain river stones right now, which was enough to help him to the peak stage of the low extreme. Moreover, since there were treasures such as mountain river stones in this world, there were likely other similar treasures that could also rapidly raise one's cultivation level. He needed to advance to the medium extreme, high extreme, and consummate level as soon as possible, and then break through to the sun-moon tier. Only after reaching the sun-moon tier would he not be an easy target for others.
After all, there were only so many cultivators at the heavenly body tier in the Joint Peace Planet.
At that time, he would be able to leave the Joint Peace Planet and search for the Rock Palace, the Heaven Sword Palace, as well as the other forces.
Pang, pang, pang. As he mulled over this, the battle in the sky had already become increasingly intense, and arrived at a crescendo.
King Enlon and Qifeng started to unleash their might, and both released a powerful god tool. King Enlon unleashed a treasure bottle that hovered above his head and poured down wisps of mystical energy. This was Tian-E mystical energy, and each wisp was as heavy as a mountain and incredibly resilient against attacks. They formed an extremely powerful defensive barrier around his body. Meanwhile, Qifeng had retrieved a treasure mirror that spat out a column of light from time to time. It possessed a formidable destructive power, and with a single strike, even lofty mountains would be instantly razed to the ground. Ding Lian also had a god tool. The golden staff he was wielding was forged from high-level godly metal, and also etched with the martial intent of his entire lifetime. It was almost one with his body, and each strike that he performed could flawlessly unleash his power. Coupled with the boost from god tools, his battle prowess was relatively frightening.
However, he was battling against 2 people after all, and each one of them was capable of fighting him alone.
One harassed him while the other attacked, and this put huge pressure on Ding Lian. Fortunately, the armor he wore was also a god tool. Its divine patterns lit up and formed a light barrier that would prevent him from being wounded unless it was shattered. The problem was, this barrier barely lasted for a moment under the frenzied attacks from the 2 elites, and it pretty much shattered after a few strikes. After a short while, Ding Lian's body had already become riddled with many new wounds. How much longer could he last? Great General Ding, what's the point? He's merely a weakling of the mountain river tier. King Enlon didn't want to push him into a corner. Wounding his opponent was one matter, but trying to kill him was a completely different matter. If such an elite unleashed their full strength, they would definitely be able to drag one of them down with him. Even if they didn't die, they would still suffer unrecoverable wounds. Ding Lian wore a cold expression as he stood drenched in blood. Most of the blood was his, but some of it was also from King Enlon and Qifeng. His black hair billowed in the air, and he appeared much like a demon god.
He roared with laughter and said, "Speak after you defeat me."
His staff technique suddenly changed, unexpectedly becoming extremely slow. Ha! Serious expressions appeared on King Enlon and Qifeng's faces. In fact, there was even a hint of nervousness. This is the intent realm of the Supreme Staff Technique's 9th form. Qifeng exclaimed. He was an old rival of Ding Lian, thus he was naturally extremely familiar with his staff techniques. The Supreme Staff Technique had a total of 9 forms, yet these were not specific techniques. Instead, they were 9 different kinds of intent realms, each being extremely flexible and capable of a myriad of changes. This was common among god-level techniques. They taught one how to channel power and utilize regulations rather than teaching one how to use set strikes or techniques. For example, the ultimate arrow was a technique that taught one how to maximize the might of their shot. Regarding the supreme staff technique, each form was more powerful than its predecessor. The ninth form was more so rumored to be invincible. Of course, the label invincible was clearly an exaggeration.
However, since it could be labeled as an intent realm of invincibility, this staff technique was definitely extremely powerful.
Ding Lian hadn't been able to master this intent realm even though he had spent 1,000,000 years practicing it. But what about now? This intent realm could raise his battle prowess by 1/3 of a star, or perhaps even half a star. He was already a 4-star genius, thus elevating his battle prowess by even 1/10 would be extremely terrifying, let alone a full half-star. King Enlon and Qi Feng both cursed their misfortune in their minds.
How are we so unfortunate?
Chapter 977. Abandoning Killing Intent. Ding Lian had definitely only mastered this ninth form just then, as the intent realm that he displayed was extremely crude. Couldn't you have mastered this later? King Enlon and Qi Feng both grumbled in their minds. At their tier, it was already extremely difficult to raise their strength anymore.
They had all been stuck at the heavenly body tier for tens of thousands of years, thus they had already tempered their cultivation level to an extremely sturdy state.
It was immensely difficult to raise their power by even a tiny amount.
However, if they could become even a tiny bit stronger, it would be enough for them to enjoy an advantage when facing off against powerful enemies.
Ding Lian smiled proudly and said, "Eat my staff." He raised his staff and was just about to strike down.
However, streaks of golden light gathered as he raised his staff, and they surprisingly formed into a circle of 36, Ding Lian.
They encircled King Enlon and Qi Feng, and like a group of golden war Buddhas, they all raised their staffs in unison. King Enlon and Qi Feng didn't dare underestimate these Ding Lians, and they both raised their battle prowess to the extreme.
Their opponent had managed to take another small step beyond his limit, and this caused a sense of trepidation to well up in their hearts.
Boom! The 36 Ding Lians attacked in unison.
Pang 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 pang.
The sky once again became a swirl of brilliant colors, making the entire heaven and earth appear dim in comparison. The brilliant colors were too dazzling, and as such, the contrast was too stark. When the brilliant colors disappeared, everyone could see the blood seeping from the corners of King Enlon and Qi Feng's mouths. It was clear that they had been wounded.
Pooh!
Ding Lian also spat out a mouthful of blood.
However, the blood was gold, and it immediately started to combust when it exited his mouth. It burned into thin air before it could even reach the ground.
Ha ha ha! Meanwhile, Qi Feng was roaring with laughter. Ding Lian, you haven't truly mastered the ninth form of the Supreme Staff technique yet. You only forcefully activated it by combusting your own blood essence. You're fighting with your life. How many times can you unleash such a technique? Ding Lian stood proudly in the air, his fighting spirit soaring as his black hair billowed behind his back. He appeared extremely confident, and he said, "Rest assured, it's definitely enough to kill you." Qi Feng's domineering aura was outdone, and he involuntarily humphed. He genuinely wanted to kill Ling Han and rid themselves of a future threat. However, he definitely wouldn't persist if this meant receiving severe wounds or perhaps even sacrificing his life. Ding Lian showed that he had the determination to battle to the death, yet Qi Feng lacked this kind of firm resolution. Thus, it was very likely that he would lose if they continued to fight. King Enlon also frowned. He hadn't expected that Ding Lian would be willing to sacrifice his life for a cultivator of the mountain river tier. It was said that Ding Lian was the most loyal to the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire out of the 7 generals. By the looks of it, this was not false. The Empress had tasked him with escorting and protecting these cultivators, so he did so without cutting any corners at all. In fact, he was even willing to sacrifice his life to complete this task.
An elite of the heavenly body tier is actually this foolishly loyal?
King Enlon had never seen the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire before, and he had only heard of her great renown. She was lauded as the greatest beauty of the world, and even the emperors and kings of the other 2 majestic empires were enchanted by her beauty.
Curiosity involuntarily welled up in his heart, and he suddenly felt a strong desire to meet this empress, who was surprisingly able to elicit such a stubborn loyalty from Ding Lian.
Qi Feng's mind had already been thrown into disarray, and he also didn't have the resolve to battle to the death.
As such, there was no need for this battle to continue. King Enlon smiled faintly and said, "Since Great General Ding is so determined, I'll give you some face.
This brat.
I won't try to kill him anymore."
In any case, Ling Han was only at the low extreme of the mountain river tier right now, and he was still eons away from reaching the heavenly body tier. There would be numerous chances to kill him in the future. Qi Feng remained silent. He was extremely unhappy about his aura being suppressed by his mortal enemy. Ding Lian chuckled coldly as he rested his staff on his shoulder, completely ignoring King Enlan's words. Face was earned, not given. However, we can spare him, but it should be fine if the youths test their mettle against each other, no? King Enlan's tone suddenly changed, and it was clear that he still hadn't abandoned the thought of killing Ling Han.
"No problem,"
Ding Lian answered without hesitation.
He waved a hand and said, "I won't interfere if their cultivation level is the same or if their age is the same."
If Ling Han lost under such conditions, then such trash didn't deserve pity even if they died. The three elites descended back onto the ground. King Enlon wore a sinister smile as he asked, "Which of you is going to battle against that prodigy from the chaotic star's majestic empire?" "I'll accept whoever can kill that human as my disciple." Qi Feng directly offered a valuable reward. At this moment, no one dared to accept. Numerous people had witnessed Ling Han's abilities at the Crimson Lake. In their minds, he was a complete freak. He was completely unscathed even after falling into the corrosive Crimson Lake. Who could defeat such a formidable defense?
Moreover, him reaching the island 3 times spoke volumes about his abilities.
The gravity fields of the floating stones didn't change according to one's cultivation level. Rather, they remained the same for everyone. So, what did Ling Han reaching the island 3 times signify then?
It signified that his power and physique were above any other person's at the low extreme.
Winning honor and glory for one's own majestic empire was undoubtedly desirable. However, what if they lost? Under the watchful gazes of so many people, it would be a complete and utter humiliation. King Enlon and Qi Feng's expressions involuntarily darkened. No one dared to challenge Ling Han, and this result brought them great embarrassment.
Wah!
Blockhead is so impressive now. He's so impressive that no one dares to challenge him? Li Weiwei was both astonished and excited. Even when Zhao Luan had been shooting to fame, there was still an occasional prodigy or two from the other 2 majestic empires who would come to challenge him. However, Ling Han was so powerful that no one dared challenge him. This was definitely a historical feat. Tang Feng involuntarily clenched his fists in jealousy and hatred. He swore that he would challenge Ling Han when he got back, and he swore that he would knock Ling Han off his divine altar. Bunch of trash. Qi Feng angrily waved his hand. "Fuck off back to the ship." The cultivators from the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire all hurried back to their warship with their tails between their legs. Who told them to lack the courage to challenge Ling Han? King Enlon sighed, and also ordered his cultivators back to the ship. The 2 elites both looked at Ling Han deeply before issuing commands to return to their respective majestic empires. They decided to let the matter slide this time. At any rate, Ling Han was still a long way off from reaching the heavenly body tier, and they could always employ the services of the Dark Knight Hall in the future. How hard could it be to kill a cultivator of the Mountain River tier?
"Let's return."
Ding Lian also waved everyone onto the ship. After everyone boarded, he immediately entered a cabin. His face instantly became gold, and he heavily kneeled onto the floor as cold sweat rushed down his face. How could he not pay a price for facing 2 elites alone?
Moreover, he had even forcefully activated the 9th form of his Supreme Staff technique at the end. This placed a tremendous burden on him, and he had only forcefully retained his composure in order to deter King Enlon and Qi Feng.
Otherwise, how would the 2 of them give up so easily? The warship quickly entered the chaotic star's majestic empire's territory, and Ding Lian was finally able to heal his wounds by drawing upon the power of the nation. This calmed him down greatly. Chapter 978. To the library again. When those who had entered the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm returned, a shocking piece of news spread. instantly shaking the whole imperial capital. Someone had crossed the Crimson Lake Island 3 times. But to the majority, they completely did not know what that meant. Was that very awesome? Immediately, someone told them, "Do you know Zhao Luan?" In the past, even Zhao Luan managed to reach the island twice, and he was already the first in 1,000 years. With such a comparison, everyone had some idea. Who was Zhao Luan? He was a real genius that everyone thought highly of, certain that he could advance into heavenly body tier in future. Moreover, it was possible that such a genius only appeared once every million years. Now, there was another one that was even greater than Zhao Luan. Who exactly is this Ling Han? You still don't know? He came from a small world. What? Someone from a small world could also be that awesome? You think you can deceive me just because I haven't studied much? I am not someone that has not seen a cultivator that has ascended from a small world. In the Shattering Void tier, they would only have battle prowess of 15 stars at most, and are practically trash. That's your fault for being ill-informed and ignorant. This person is the emperor of a small world that has come through opening the sky. Hiss. If the fact that Ling Han represented the chaotic star's majestic empire and won the first place in the competition between the 3 nations caused his reputation to rise, then now, his name really rung out through the whole imperial capital, and became known to all the forces in the city. If he could mature, this man could very possibly become an ultimate elite of the heavenly body tier in the future. Of course, the heavenly body tier was too difficult to reach. Firstly, doing so required a great amount of time, and secondly, required an extremely large amount of resources. If there wasn't a powerful force to support him, this perhaps would remain only a possibility. Some Sun-Moon tier forces had already decided to make Ling Han their son-in-law. As long as Ling Han nodded, they would nurture him with all their resources in hand, and in the future, their own clan would naturally become a clan with a heavenly body tier elite, and become an influential force on the joint peace planet. But there were also some forces that revealed killing intent towards Ling Han, for example, the Luo clan. They would definitely not allow Ling Han to mature and reach his full potential. Amidst these turbulent waves in the darkness, Ling Han returned to the academy. The first thing he did was inform the academy beforehand that he was planning to attempt breaking through into the Mountain River tier. Presently, he had only raised his cultivation level with the aid of Mountain River stones, and lacked personal comprehension. He would only be limited to the peak stage of the low extreme, and could not possibly advance further than that. He had to cultivate an immortal level cultivation technique to truly become an immortal. The academy attached great importance to this matter, and deliberately sent out a well-experienced elder to safeguard his Tao. Firstly, he naturally had to learn an immortal level cultivation technique. Without the experience of a predecessor, and he had to invent his own cultivation technique, and that was definitely not a matter of 8 or 10 years, but an extensive project that would take a few hundred to a few thousand years of time. Cultivation techniques of the low extreme were gifted by the academy, but from the medium extreme onwards, cultivation techniques had to be redeemed through academic credits. However, because Ling Han had reached the Crimson Lake Island 3 times, the higher-ups of the Northern Institution were naturally very pleased, and hence rewarded him with 1,000 academic credits. One had to understand that an ordinary student of the low extreme would not be able to earn so many academic credits even in 10 years. This was very, very generous. The cultivation technique that he was cultivating now was called 7-Star Secrets, a very ordinary cultivation technique. Every student could obtain this cultivation technique from the academy after they had reached the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier. Since it was free, it was naturally impossible that it would be any high-grade item. After all, there was nothing so nice like reaping a harvest when no seeds were sown. The person safeguarding his Tao was responsible for explaining cultivation techniques, and Ling Han could ask him for guidance if there was anything he did not understand. An ordinary student would have 3 days to ask for guidance, but Ling Han had 7. This naturally was proof of the generous fondness of the higher-ups of the Northern Institution. However, Ling Han merely used 1 day to ask for guidance, and on the 2nd day, he began to achieve enlightenment in seclusion. Firstly, his comprehension ability was indeed amazing, and secondly, he was already standing in the low extreme, so if he turned back to achieve enlightenment of his cultivation on this level, the difficulty was naturally considerably lesser than it was for others. After all, the difficulty was in teaching you how to achieve enlightenment regarding the regulations of the heavens and earth to form your mountain river. Now that his mountain river had already taken form, He had skipped the most difficult step. Ling Han drew out a flame mountain river stone, and as he comprehended the secrets of the mountain river tier, he continued to refine it.
In this manner, he would be able to attain a more visible and physical comprehension.
After this mountain river stone was refined, he had also advanced into the peak stage of the low extreme. He did not stop, but rather continued to refine mountain river stones, wanting to charge up to the maximum limit of the low extreme in a single go. He had made a miscalculation. 4 mountain river stones were completely insufficient to raise his cultivation level to the maximum of the low extreme. The resources required for every step forward would also be double the last. After he had refined 4 flame mountain river stones, he discovered a problem. He had not reached the maximum of the low extreme, but no more divine patterns could be emblazoned on the large mountain, and his Dantianth maximum limit was 9. If I refine any more special mountain river stones, that would only be pure waste. I can only continue to do so after I have advanced into the medium extreme and formed the second mountain river. Ling Han drew out an ordinary mountain river stone and began refining. This would only increase his cultivation level, but did not possess any special effects. Hence, this was not a waste. Lam at least 3 mountain river stones away from reaching the maximum of the low extreme. Ling Han shook his head.
He had not imagined that the distance would be so wide, because the early stage of the low extreme only needed a single mountain river stone.
However, at least, I am now truly a mountain river tier cultivator. He smiled.
After 4 days, he had finally comprehended the secrets of mountain river tier, and become a genuine immortal who had potential to continue advancing. In his Dantian, the first mountain river had also been magnified by about 100-fold, and was no longer smaller than other mountain rivers.
I have just learnt the 7-star secrets, and it is going to expire soon. I will need a new cultivation technique. Otherwise, I would not be able to break through to the medium extreme. This is not something that mountain river stones can help with. Ling Han shook his head.
The grade of the cultivation technique directly decided the speed and pace of cultivation.
Hence, he had to save up enough academic credits to redeem an awesome cultivation technique.
After he came out of seclusion, he made a report to the Academy that he would be leaving the Shattering Void Tier division in future, and officially step into the Low Extreme division. Because the Academy attached great importance to him, they had long since made the arrangements for him. Old Man Su was seated at the entrance, looking like he was about to nod off. "Greetings, Senior."
Ling Han walked over, and greeted him respectfully. "You're back?" Old Man Su asked casually without opening his eyes.
"I'm back," Ling Han answered with a nod. "Go on."
Old Man Su waved him off. Ling Han nodded again. He pressed a hand on the stone plaque at the entrance, and obtained a new level of permission. He could now ascend to the 2nd floor. He went to the 2nd floor. The bookshelves here were double the number on the 1st floor. However, their contents were not books in the traditional meaning of the word, but rather multiple bone plaques. Some were even complete bones. There were also some pieces of godly metal that were covered with divine patterns, exuding an ancient air. Chapter 979. Universal 8 Desolation Technique. There were restrictions set up outside these shelves as protection.
If one stretched his hand out, an introduction to the secret techniques within would be displayed, for example, whether they were cultivation techniques or martial arts techniques, what grade they were, of what elemental alignment they were, and so on.
More importantly, you'd also know how many academic credits was needed to redeem them. If you had enough academic credits, then you could immediately spend your academic credits to dissolve the restriction to read through them. Furthermore, you would be allowed to undergo comprehension here for 10 days. However, if you still wanted to continue comprehension after the 10 days, you would have to spend academic credits again, though the amount would be halved. This would also give one enough motivation to make as much use of time as possible.
Even though immortals could easily have 100,000s to millions of years of life, having reached this level, one should know that if he wanted to ascend to a high peak, there really never was enough time no matter how much there was.
Ling Han merely read the introduction. He should at least have some idea before he could decide which cultivation technique he would choose to cultivate. Many of the cultivation techniques here were very cheap, and only needed a few dozen academic credits. However, there were also expensive ones, like the Black Thunderground River Secrets. It actually needed 5,000 academic credits, which dumbfounded Ling Han. Who could afford to redeem it?
But when he thought that an ordinary student would have to stay over 5,000 years in the low extreme division as he calculated, 5,000 academic credits was really not that much.
Moreover, the Black Thunderground River Secrets was not the most expensive cultivation technique. There were some that cost more than 10,000. In the Immortal Realm, cultivation techniques were divided into a total of 10 levels, with level 1 as the lowest, and level 10 as the highest.
For example, the 7-star secrets that Ling Han had learnt before was one of the lowest grade level 1 cultivation technique. Moreover, even if you were given the complete 7-star secrets, you could only cultivate to consummate level of the mountain river tier at most.
Here, the highest level cultivation technique was level 4. Meanwhile, according to Shui Yanyu, the inherited cultivation technique of the Shui clan, Moon-Shattering Secrets, was level 5. Unfortunately, no matter how outrageously bold Shui Yanyu was, she would not dare to teach him the cultivation technique secretly. If she did, both she and Ling Han would be dead. To any clan or sect, the cultivation technique was the most important inheritance, and would definitely not be passed on easily. This is good, that is good too, just that they are all so expensive. Ling Han sighed repeatedly. At first, he had thought that he could go on a spending spree with the 1,000 academic credits that he had gotten as a reward from the academy. Only after he had gone through the shelves did he realize how poor he was. I can first redeem a low-level cultivation technique, and break through to the medium extreme. Then, I can save up slowly to redeem a higher-level cultivation technique. Ling Han made his decision, but did not immediately proceed to redeem any. He came down from upstairs, and just when he was about to leave, he saw Old Man Su had opened his eyes, and said to him, "Young man, walk with this old man."
This old man actually opened his mouth and offered him an invitation. Ling Han could not help but feel overwhelmed by the favor he was shown, and said, "Please, senior."
Old Man Su stood up, and walked ahead, minding his own business. Ling Han, meanwhile, followed behind, maintaining a respectful attitude. The Scarlet Heaven Academy was incredibly huge, and there were dense forests and gardens everywhere on the academy grounds. The two of them arrived at the bank of a lake. Light was reflected off the rippling waves, looking like a mad dance of thousands of golden snakes. "I heard about your performance in the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm." Old Man Su turned to look back at Ling Han with a smile and said, "Very good." "Thank you for your compliment, senior," Ling Han replied modestly. Old Man Su laughed, stroked his beard, and said, "Have you chosen any cultivation technique just now?" "To tell the truth, senior, this junior has indeed chosen a few cultivation techniques.
Unfortunately, I am embarrassingly short on funds, and do not have nearly enough to redeem any of them," Ling Han answered with a shake of his head.
Old Man Su said, "I do have a cultivation technique that I can teach you. However, I want you to agree to a condition."
"What condition?"
Ling Han asked. "In the future, if you encounter the highest Jade Essence Heart, you must retrieve it for me at all costs." Old Man Su's eyes lit up, a strange image of suns, moons, and stars started shining in his eyes. His whole person seemed to be exuding a supreme air of dominance. At this moment, he was no longer an old man.
If it wasn't for the fact that his hair was still white, and his face was covered with wrinkles, anyone would think that he was a stalwart, strong man of 7 feet.
Ling Han was at a loss. He asked, "What is the highest Jade Essence Heart?" "If you encounter it, you will naturally find out."
Old Man Su only exhibited a bit of his might, and his aura immediately ebbed away like the tide, with him turning back into a decrepit old man. He waved a hand dismissively and said, "Your present cultivation level is still too low, so even if you think about it, it will come to nothing."
"How completely frank. Do you not think that will be a blow to my ego?"
"Does senior not worry that I will not try my best?"
Ling Han asked.
After all, he had only asked him to try his very best to retrieve it in a situation when he encountered it, but did not ask him to search for it with all his might.
This and that were two very different stories.
Old Man Su laughed loudly and said, "Then I would have misjudged you."
Ling Han nodded. "Then please teach me, senior." This cultivation technique is called the Universal 8 Desolation Technique, but all I got was an incomplete scroll. I could only cultivate to the consummate level of the heavenly body tier. As for after that,
It would be up to you to think of a way, Old Man Su said.
This cultivation technique sounded awesome. Universal 8 Desolation Technique. So he would be the sole supreme existence. Dare I ask what grade this cultivation technique is at? Ling Han questioned. Old Man Su thought for a moment, and then with a shake of his head said, I am not sure about that either.
However, as far as I know, in terms of rate of advancement, and in terms of the quality of origin power cultivated from this technique, it would definitely not be inferior to anyone on the Joint Peace Planet.
These words were a bit boastful. The whole Joint Peace Planet? Then wouldn't that include the 3 majestic empires as well?
He drew out a piece of jade, tossing it over to Ling Han and said, The cultivation technique is recorded on this.
Comprehend it on your own, and if there is anything that you do not understand, you can come and ask me. Thank you, Senior. Ling Han solemnly put the jade away. This favor was overwhelmingly huge.
If it was really as what Old Man Su had said, that the grade of the Universal 8 Desolation Technique was not inferior to that of any existing cultivation technique on the Joint Peace Planet, then he needed only send it to be auctioned, and this would lead to a frenzied snatching from everyone.
After all, a treasure like the Mountain River Stone could only nurture a few geniuses, but a supreme cultivation technique could increase the overall level of a faction, and the effect would last generations. Ling Han did not make any empty boasts, but merely promised in his heart that if he discovered the location of the highest jade essence heart, he would try his utter best to retrieve it. He switched to new accommodations. The students of the Low Extreme Division could not possibly stay together with the Shattering Void Tier Division. After Ling Han moved into his new quarters, he did not give anyone prior notice. Instead, he immediately began to cultivate in seclusion. He currently had 2 missions: recultivate the Universal 8 Desolation Technique and improve his body art to the immortal level. Meanwhile, some things happened during his seclusion. Tang Feng very publicly issued a challenge towards Ling Han. Chapter 980. Medium Extreme. Now, everyone in the imperial capital was very expectant. When would Ling Han be able to catch up to Zhao Luan in cultivation level, and thus lead to an ultimate match between an older genius and a newer genius? Due to that, the underground casinos had already laid out the stakes, betting on the time left before the first battle between Ling Han and Zhao Luan would explode. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and there were even 10 years to 100 years. The closer the time, the higher the stakes were. Though it was possible that this bet would only be realized in a few dozen years or even a few hundred years, there was still a considerable number of bettors. Luo clan residence. Luo Hongdao's face was ashen. For the sake of this trip into the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm, the clan had paid an extremely heavy price just to attain 4 entry slots. But after those 4 had entered, they did not come back out again. Most importantly, the Crimson Ground locking net was lost as well. The price paid for attaining those 4 entry slots compared with the price of creating the Crimson Ground locking net was on completely 2 different levels. Even though the Crimson Ground locking net was only effective on living beings of the Mountain River tier, this type of god tool had always been rare, and was incredibly valuable. For it, even the Luo clan had suffered serious injury, and sacrificed a colossal part of their wealth. What is going on here? 4 of them went in, bringing the Crimson Ground locking net with them, so how could it be that not even one of them came back out? He exclaimed, slamming a hand on the table, appearing to be incredibly furious. In reply to Lord Patriarch, someone has seen that Ling Han was also inside that flame cave. Luo Qing answered. He was also an important pillar of support for the Luo clan with his cultivation level in the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. Luo Hongdao's eyes froze over. Now, whenever he heard this name, he would feel an unnamed rage. He humphed and said, Are you telling me that it was that ant from a small world that has killed Luo Jian and the others? Lord Patriarch, that Ling Han is a 4-star genius. Furthermore, with the help of Mountain River stones, his cultivation level has also reached the late stage or even the peak stage of the low extreme. His battle prowess should not be underestimated. Luo Qing exclaimed in full honesty. Luo Hongdao shook his head and said, Luo Jian and the others had brought the Crimson Ground locking net which could weaken their opponent by a minor level with them, so how much battle prowess could that ant show? At most, his battle prowess would only be in the peak stage of the low extreme, so how could he possibly be a match for Luo Jian and the others? Luo Qing could not answer, either. This comparison of abilities was really too clear. The leader, Luo Xiang, was at the peak stage of the low extreme in the first place, and his battle prowess had even surpassed 4 stars. Fighting a Ling Han that had been trapped by the Crimson Ground locking net would surely end with a one-sided victory. Unless, the God Tool did not take effect, but how could that be possible? Oh right. News came from the Dark Knight Hall's side that the first attempt to assassinate Ling Han had failed, and now that Ling Han's cultivation level increased, they said they would have to raise the price if they were to continue the mission, Luo Qing said. Pah! That bunch of trash. Luo Hongdao threw down his teacup. They can't even deal with a shattering void tier cultivator, allowing him to jump around for so long, and now they actually want to raise the price? Then, should we abandon the request? Luo Qing asked cautiously. Luo Hongdao pondered for a moment, and then asked, how much are they asking for? 100,000. Luo Hongdao almost jumped out of his seat. Why don't they go and steal that amount? He is only a lowlife of the low extreme of Mountain River tier, and has no background to speak of, yet they actually quoted such a high price? It was not the Luo clan could not afford this price, but to spend such an amount on a cultivator in the low extreme of the Mountain River tier. No matter how he thought about it, it was not worth it. That brat reached the Crimson Lake Island 3 times, and is just like a rising star. The price to assassinate him has naturally increased with the situation, Luo Qing explained. Luo Hongdao naturally knew this logic. He was just unwilling to accept it. After Luo Hongdao thought for a moment, he finally said, agree to it. We cannot have any relation to that brat's death. Yes. Luo Qing nodded. He was also in agreement on that. It was a little expensive, but if the Luo clan personally made a move, and they were found out, then the crime for killing a super rookie could either be light or heavy. It could even cause the entire Luo clan to be consigned to eternal damnation. The Universal 8 Desolation technique was extremely hard to cultivate. Ling Han's comprehension ability was already very high, but he had still spent a whole 7 days' time to completely understand the first level of this cultivation technique. He forgot the 7-star secrets, and had the origin power inside his body surge forward in a new manner. This cultivation technique could simultaneously draw on spiritual qi of 6 different elemental alignments, and the origin power formed was incredibly condensed. Hence, after Ling Han had switched to cultivating this technique, his cultivation level degraded at first. That was because he had to temper his origin power once more. It was just like when a piece of rough iron had to be tempered into steel, its weight would naturally decrease. Another 10 days later, Ling Han finally returned to his initial cultivation level. However, his battle prowess was slightly stronger than before. Next, he set the Universal 8 Desolation technique aside, and began cultivating his body art. He drew out spiritual meat to consume. It was a very nutritious item, its effects surpassing the effects of true origin stones greatly. Furthermore, he had obtained a good few kilograms of it. If he actually sold it all off, it would bring him an income of a few thousand true origin stones. However, because the numbers of immortal-level demonic beasts were decreasing, spiritual meat had also become something that had no lack of buyers, yet no one was willing to sell. It was not something as simple as a few thousand true origin stones. Spiritual meat needed not be cooked, and could be directly consumed. When this meat was placed in his mouth, Ling Han felt as if he was eating the meat that had been reared in the Black Tower, and it was incomparably delicious. It was no wonder that spiritual meat was also one of the best delicacies of the immortal realm. However, a demonic beast of Mountain River tier would only be able to produce 50 to 200 grams of spiritual meat. The amount was really much too little. All he did was eat, then cultivate. Then he would eat again, and go back to cultivation. Another month had passed, and his body art finally broke through to immortal level. In this period of over a month, he had not neglected his cultivation of origin power, either. He had just managed to reach the real peak stage of the low extreme. Ling Han just continued his seclusion. He wanted to rush up to the medium extreme in a single go. He began to cultivate the second level of the Universal 8 Desolation technique, and spent another half a month's time to have a complete grasp of it. Then, he drew out a large amount of true origin stones, and began to barrage this great barrier. Ordinarily speaking, even the geniuses of the Scarlet Heaven Academy would need around 5,000 years to be able to complete this step. However, Ling Han had the help of the mountain river stones, so he could skip over this process of accumulating origin power. Then, he used the Universal 8 Desolation technique to reforge his origin power and stabilize his foundations so he could break through to the medium extreme in an extremely short time. This was amazing. With such a comparison, even Zhao Luan would have to admit that Ling Han was superior. Finally, he began the breaking through. Though this was only a breach of a minor level, in the immortal realm, the gap between every minor level was extremely massive.
Hence, the breakthrough at this step would bring about a fundamental change, for example, of the toughness of his physique or the vitality of his body.
The most direct change was lifespan, which would be raised from 100,000 years to 200,000 years. No matter how freakish Ling Han was, he would not be able to succeed in a single step, because there were no mountain river stones that could solidify mountain rivers on his behalf, and he had to take it one step at a time. Thus, a whole 4 months later, Ling Han finally formed his second huge mountain. He immediately exited the Black Tower. He had stayed in the Black Tower for this entire half-year's time. That was the safest place. Quang! Loud thunder rung out in the sky, and dark clouds immediately came in a dense mass. There was lightning flickering in their depths. The heavenly tribulation was coming.
Ling Han shot out, and came to the plaza that the Academy had deliberately set aside for undergoing the heavenly tribulation, ready to receive its arrival.
Before he knew it, the first bolt of lightning had already struck. Chapter 981. Want to make some money? Ling Han greeted the arrival of the heavenly tribulation. Initially, it was an incredibly simple matter for someone with his physique to safely endure the heavenly tribulation. His physique was on par with level 2 godly metal, and he could allow the tribulation to blast him as it liked, yet he would still be steadfast and unmoving. But if that was the case, his body would not be tempered, and his physique would only remain on its original level.
Hence, for the sake of becoming stronger, he could only choose to take the initiative to shatter his own body, letting his godly bones, blood, and flesh suffer the barrage from the tribulation to be tempered and pounded in all ways.
Then, he would use the indestructible heaven scroll to rebuild the body after the destruction, forming the true him, so his physique could improve to another level. Still, the last time he endured the heavenly tribulation had happened just over half a year ago, and now he had to endure it a second time. Even Ling Han shuddered internally at that. The feeling was really not something pleasant. If you want to become the strongest amongst your equals, and an invincible existence in the future, then you would have to endure difficulties others would not be able to. If not, what right would you have to be stronger than others? Small Tower's voice rung out in his mind. This Tsundere Tower always acted like it was lecturing him. Ling Han naturally knew that logic, but it was just saying empty words, without experiencing it personally. This was really pain-agonizing enough to cause him to want to die, yet he wasn't even allowed to complain a bit. Quang! The heavenly tribulation did not care how he felt. It would merely strike down one frightening attack after another, intending to erase him. Ling Han shattered his godly bones to endure the baptism by the heavenly tribulation. Someone was enduring a heavenly tribulation. This commotion was too huge, and naturally attracted the notice of those in the academy.
However, there were really too many students inside the Scarlet Heaven Academy, so even if it was not every day that someone would be enduring a tribulation, there would indeed be someone enduring one here once every few days.
Hence, some people had taken note, but it was only the few people that just happened to be in the vicinity, and it hadn't become a public spectacle. Moreover, at this moment, the heavenly tribulation had formed. Brilliant white lightning was dancing in the sky, and it was very difficult for any normal person to distinguish Ling Han's appearance, so he would naturally not garner more attention than this. Additionally, Ling Han was destroying his own body, and had become a mass of flesh of blood, so who could recognize him in that bloody pile? Some of them even thought Ling Han had become like this from being struck by the tribulation, and couldn't help but shake their heads as they wondered internally who this person could be. He was about to endure a tribulation, yet did not make adequate preparations. The tribulation had just begun, and he was already looking so horrible. He would definitely not be able to endure what came after. But what stunned them was that even if that idiot was more or less a pile of scrambled flesh, the heavenly tribulation still did not look like it was going to stop, and was still blasting down attacks quickly. It was apparent that that person was not dead yet. He didn't die even from that. The scene dumbfounded them.
Half a day passed in the blink of an eye, and Ling Han had reformed his physical body. In the instant the tribulation dissipated, he wrapped a cloak around himself and disappeared into thin air.
There was nothing that could be done. He was now completely naked, so how could he see anyone like this? Did you guys see that person's appearance?
No, he ran away too fast.
This is really shocking. He had obviously been blasted so horribly by the heavenly tribulation, so how could he still come back to life? Could it be that he has consumed the alchemical pill that only exists in legends, 9 Deaths Reincarnation Divine Pill? That supreme divine pill that would still grant revival even after experiencing 9 deaths. Aside from this kind of divine pill, what else could have such nature-defying effects?
Amidst the sounds of discussion of these people, Ling Han had already returned to his new courtyard.
He hurriedly took a bath, then dressed himself, took out food ingredients, and began barbecuing, planning to reward his stomach. He had not eaten or drunk already for a few months. Damn brat, where have you gone these few days? You made me look so hard for you. The big white cat appeared on the courtyard wall.
Its nose was extremely sharp, and it had found its way here after smelling the delicious aroma of barbecued meat.
This aroma was too familiar. Ling Han couldn't help but smile and said, "Are you actually a cat or a dog? Your nose is so keen." "I am a descendant of the white tiger." The big white cat meowed and pounced on Ling Han. You can speak?" Ling Han was astonished. When the big white cat made its move, he immediately discovered that its cultivation had reached the mountain river tier. Apparently, when demonic beasts advanced into the mountain river tier, they could take human form, so it would not be strange that this cat demon could speak human language. Instead, the strange thing was it had not assumed human form yet. "I am a descendant of the white tiger, so what is so strange about me being able to speak?" The big white cat attacked repeatedly.
However, while it was true that it had advanced into mountain river tier, and it was also a fact that it was a descendant of the white tiger, Ling Han's cultivation level was higher, and his abilities were similarly freakish, so how could he be afraid of it?
Ling Han casually parried, merely defending without attacking, wanting to see how strong this cat demon was. It was really quite powerful. The big white cat's cultivation level was merely in the early stage of the low extreme, yet its battle prowess had astonishingly surpassed 4 stars, which was extremely shocking. "Humph, my bloodline has not completely awakened, or I would be even more awesome," it declared in a very tsundere manner. "Is that right?" Ling Han smiled, and suddenly threw out a furry ball of wool. Meow! The fat white cat immediately threw Ling Han off, and turned to pounce on it.
Only when its claws had found the ball of wool did it erupt into a bout of meowing with anger.
"You damn brat! You actually dare to tease me! Hee, eat some meat. If you're not eating, then forget it." Ling Han sat back down. Since he now knew the abilities of this big white cat, what meaning was there to continue the fight further? He could suppress it with a single finger now. The big white cat strolled over in displeasure, but after a few pieces of meat ended up in its tummy, it was immediately radiant with delight, declaring Ling Han its brother. It had just entered into the mountain river tier not too long ago, and had just learned how to speak. Hence it spoke quite a lot. It was practically a chatterbox, making Ling Han want to directly stuff its mouth, or stuff up his own ears. The big white cat ate and drank at his place every day. After 2 days passed, Li Weiwei came to visit. "Damn blockhead, where did you run off to in this half a year?" The moment she entered, Li Weiwei interrogated him energetically. "Oh, cultivating in seclusion," Ling Han answered indifferently. "What did you go into seclusion for? Do you know that I was very embarrassed because of you?" Li Weiwei said, panting in rage. "What did I do to you?" Ling Han asked, smiling. Li Weiwei flopped down, and began eating the moment she grabbed some food, not the slightest bit reserved. "Tang Feng issued a challenge to you, yet there was not even a sign of you. Hence, he made a public declaration and said that you were a coward that did not dare to accept the challenge."
"I spoke up for you and said you were not a coward, and would very soon come out to accept the challenge."
"And what happened? You actually did not appear for half a year." Now, everyone in the imperial capital is saying you are not living up to your reputation, calling you a coward and a wimp. I spoke up for you, and now I've become a joke. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, So I've caused you to feel some grievance. Still, there was nothing that could be done. I was in seclusion after all, so I didn't know anything. Because he feared he would be disturbed by others, he had stayed all that while inside the Black Tower. It became impossible for anyone to find him. Also, Li Weiwei looked excited. Zhao Luan has already advanced into consummate level, has won a consecutive 20 battles in the Iron Blood Stadium, and is acclaimed as a ruler of the present young generation, with no equal. Now, everyone is talking about when you can catch up to him and have a good battle. For this, there are even betting pools set up. Ling Han's eyes involuntarily lit up, and he asked, What are the stakes? 110 if it is within a year, 1:9 if it is within 2 years. Then it would be 1:2 if it happens 10 years later, 2:3 if it is after 20 years, and after 100 years, it would be 10-12. In any case, the longer the time, the lower the stakes are. Ling Han showed a smile and asked, Want to make some money? Chapter 982. Challenging Zhao Luan. Hearing the words make some money, Li Weiwei's beautiful eyes immediately shone. As Ling Han had been in seclusion all this while, the business of selling food ingredients naturally could only be called to a halt. With the size of hers and Ji Yun'er's spatial spirit tool, the food ingredients inside could only last about a dozen days at most. They had sold off everything not long after their return. Because of this, the two girls felt great regret. Due to the fact that Ling Han had not reappeared for such a long time, even they felt ravenous. How are we going to make money? She quickly asked. Soon, a large auction will begin. If I have money, I will be able to make father sit up and take notice of me. What auction? Ling Han asked. Oh, the imperial capital will host an auction every once in a while, and this time just so happens to be not long after the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm ended, so it will naturally be even grander. There will be a considerable amount of good stuff. Li Weiwei exclaimed, slightly excited. She paused, put a fierce expression on her pretty face and said, You haven't replied. What is the way to make money? Ling Han laughed loudly and said, That's simple. Isn't there a wager about when Zhao Luan and I will battle? Realization immediately dawned on Li Weiwei, and she quickly jumped up and clapped her hands. She declared, We will go make a bet first, then you go and challenge Zhao Luan. Wait, what if Zhao Luan ignores you? Ling Han snickered and said, That will depend on how awesome you, the daughter of the left minister, is. Let's see if you can change the wager to when I will issue a challenge to Zhao Luan. Otherwise, he would not have needed to drag Li Weiwei in. Li Weiwei quickly nodded, her expression saying, I get it. But soon enough, a worried expression showed on her face, and she asked, But what if Zhao Luan accepts the challenge, and you are killed by him? In any case that has nothing to do with me, so whatever. She answered her own question, and was indeed not the slightest bit worried. Ling Han scoffed and said, Zhao Luan definitely can't kill me, and if it was not for the fact that he has advanced into the consummate level, he could possibly be killed by me. This was not a mere boast. His present physique had reached the extent of level 3 godly metal, and even if a consummate level cultivator were to attack him, it would take time to penetrate his defenses. Aside from that, he still had the Crimson Ground locking net. Caught in it, Zhao Luan would see his cultivation level decrease. At the time, those people from the Luo clan wanted to use this divine net against that lava beast king, which meant that they had been confident that they would be able to kill that beast king with the aid of this net. Going along that line of deduction, the effect of this divine net should be to weaken the victim's cultivation level by a minor level. Zhao Luan's cultivation level would be decreased by a minor level, and he would be still trapped by the divine net, which would affect his mobility. If Ling Han summoned the annihilating dragon star arrow, it was not impossible that he could kill the former with a single strike in an instant. After all, that beast king from before was similarly in the early stage of consummate level, and it hadn't even been trapped by the net, yet wasn't it still almost killed with one arrow from him? However, could the only son of great General Zhao be killed? It was not possible even in a mortal duel.
Was Ling Han not afraid that this great general's killing intent would soar, and he'd murder him with no care for the law?
The greater one's abilities, the less power rules would have over him.
In the first place, rules were something the strong imposed on the weak, and whether the strong themselves obeyed them or otherwise depended completely on their mood.
Unless Ling Han could duck into the Black Tower after he had killed him. However, he was not a solitary entity, there was still the Great Ling Empire. Ling Han shook his head.
If he could not be killed, he could only give him a heavy thrashing to give the latter a deeply ingrained lesson. He was sure that as long as Zhao Luan was neither killed nor crippled, Great General Zhao would not be so shameless that he would act personally. The problem was, could he subdue Zhao Luan even with the Crimson Ground locking net? The other party was a 4-star genius, and even if he was weakened by a minor level, his battle prowess could still reach the early stage of consummate level. As for Ling Han, he was now in the early stage of the medium extreme, and was behind by a whole minor level.
Furthermore, he could only exhibit battle prowess surpassing 5 stars at most. If not, he did not know what would happen. One had to know that he had ascended the Crimson Lakes Island thrice, and shown potential that exceeded 4 stars close to 5 stars, which was enough to make 2 great majestic empires want to kill him while he had not yet matured to his maximum potential. Then, battle prowess of 6 stars would definitely make others uneasy.
What nice dreams you have.
Li Weiwei shook her head and said, "You still don't know yet, right?"
After Zhao Luan broke through, he had been bestowed with the rank of a 7th-rank military officer by the Empress, with his name engraved on the totem, so he can draw on power of the nation. He would be able to increase his battle prowess by another star at least.
Ling Han's brow furrowed. Then, going by that calculation, it was practically impossible to defeat Zhao Luan. Unless everything progressed as he expected. First, he'd use the Crimson Ground locking net to trap his opponent, then use the annihilating Dragon Star arrow to deal a heavy injury. He could avoid vital points like the head and heart, and he would only have that one chance. If he missed, then he could only admit defeat. Ling Han pondered for a moment, and then said, "If I and Zhao Luan battle, there would definitely be new bets. I am sure that practically all bankers would not be so stupid as to directly open betting for whether it would be I or Zhao Luan that emerges victorious, but rather how many moves Zhao Luan would take to defeat and make me surrender."
N.
Li Weiwei quickly nodded. Otherwise, the banker would definitely lose money to death. Ling Han cracked a smile and said, "Then we'll just make use of Zhao Luan to earn a great sum first, and step on him in the future." Li Weiwei was stunned. Why was this damn blockhead always pumped so full of confidence? Don't you know that you come from a small world, and don't have much backing? On what basis do you think that Zhao Luan would not kill you?
However, it had to be admitted that this kind of confidence gave him an alluring temperament.
Then hand over your money quickly. I will go now to place our bet. Her mind was soon so crammed with the words, "earn a great sum," that even her pretty face was glowing. After Ling Han entered into the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm, he had earned some money all from looting others. Then, he began cultivating, and spent a little to attain medium extreme, but added with the sum accumulated previously, there were still 4,000 true origin stones. He handed the whole sum over to Li Weiwei. Li Weiwei left impatiently, and returned only after a day.
She told him that everything was settled, and the only thing they were waiting for now was for him to issue the challenge.
Ling Han immediately wrote a challenge for duel, and stuck it on the main doors of the Northern Institution. It was naturally a challenge issued to Zhao Luan. The news seemed to have sprouted wings, and instantly spread throughout the whole Northern Institution, the Scarlet Heaven Academy, and the entire imperial capital. Everyone were discussing spiritedly. They had not thought that this genius that had been in silence for over half a year would finally reappear. Furthermore, he was being so high profile from the moment he appeared, actually issuing a challenge to Zhao Luan. Who was Zhao Luan?
The only son of the great General Zhao, the strongest genius in the last 1,000 years, and someone who was strongly expected to perhaps reach the heavenly body tier. All of a sudden, everyone in the imperial capital was guessing whether Zhao Luan would accept the challenge or not.
Ho ho, this junior brother disciple is quite interesting. He has just advanced into the low extreme division, and has already issued a challenge to Zhao Luan. In a courtyard of the Western Institution,
there was presently a blue-robed young man, sitting peacefully and sipping tea.
Behind him was a woman dressed in a tight-fitting outfit.
She had a tall and slender figure, the leather of her outfit completely accentuating all the curves of her voluptuous figure. It was practically enough to make one salivate.
Additionally, her appearance was no disappointment to such a fine figure. Her looks were filled with a wild kind of temptation. Her black hair was done in a large braid, falling straight down to her hips, making that rounded erect bottom appear even more impressive. When the woman saw that the blue-robed young man's teacup was almost empty, she hurriedly refilled his cup. She said, "Young master, in your opinion, will Zhao Luan accept the challenge?" Chapter 983. Astonishing Stakes.
Of course not.
The blue-robed young man shook his head. His cultivation level is so much higher than Ling Han's, so even if he won, it would be an embarrassment. So why would he accept? Yet the bodysuit beauty said, "Young master may not know, but Zhao Luan still has a personal grudge with Ling Han."
Oh!
An expression of surprise appeared on the blue-robed young man's face. How could this be? What kind of abilities and background did Zhao Luan have? To be blunt, even if Ling Han wanted to offend Zhao Luan, he shouldn't have a chance to. This blue-robed young man's name was Sha Yuan, and he was the third son of the great General Sha Jing of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. He was also his youngest son. His talent in martial arts was similarly amazing, and he had long since advanced into consummate level of the Mountain River Tier 1000 years ago, and by now had reached the peak stage. Ordinarily, he should have left the academy, but if the son of the great General Sha was determined to remain at the academy, how could they dare to chase him out? To the rich and noble, the Scarlet Heaven Academy was not just a place for cultivation. In truth, the conditions in their own homes were considerably better. The reason why they came to the academy was for making connections, and to accumulate their own power. Among those that could enroll in the academy, who was not a genius? For example, Zhao Luan himself had 3 great followers, and each of them was a 2-star genius, and according to rumors, they might even be 3-star geniuses. Who did not want to gain the support of this kind of talent? Part of the reason why the academy was divided into 4 institutions, with each on poor terms with the others, was because they did not want some descendant of nobility to stretch his arms too far. This was an active restriction, so they could only go crazy in a single institution. The bodysuit beauty was naturally not going to wait for Sha Yuan to voice the question, and hurriedly continued, "It is because of Shui Yanyu. Apparently, she has already pledged herself in marriage to Ling Han. Her name was Lu Yingxi, was a child that great General Sha had chosen from the orphanage. She had extraordinary talent in martial arts, and was both Sha Yuan's childhood playmate and sparring partner. She was also his death guard one. There were a total of 4 death guards like her, and they were collectively called 4 Panthers." Sha Yuan was stunned for a moment, and then suddenly erupted into loud laughter. He was laughing so hard that he was practically tearing up. Zhao Luan, aren't you extremely proud? Why is it that you can't even keep your own woman?"
Even though the 7 generals were of equal rank, the relations between them could definitely not be considered amicable in any sense of the word. Furthermore, he and Zhao Luan were both pampered, wealthy young masters of the imperial capital, so there was no lack of grudges between them, as they both wanted to snatch the esteemed title of the greatest young master of the imperial capital. Hence, knowing that Zhao Luan had actually experienced such a great loss, Sha Yuan was naturally going to laugh loudly. "Lu Ying, you will not betray me, right?"
Sha Yuan abruptly asked. Lu Ying's heart shook, and she quickly knelt down and replied, "I will definitely not betray young master." Sha Yuan swept a look over her and said, "Go and investigate this person well. I am very intrigued by him."
"Yes."
Lu Ying stood up and left through the doors.
"Is it that you won't or you dare not?"
An unfathomable smile appeared on Sha Yuan's face. Tang Feng almost went mad in fury. Ling Han ignored his challenge, so he looked down on him as a coward, and claimed that Ling Han was as brave as a mouse, yet the latter still completely ignored him. But now, he was directly issuing a challenge to Zhao Luan. Wasn't this completely overlooking him? He wanted nothing more than to tear Ling Han to pieces. This challenge from Ling Han had instantly suppressed his fame once more. Zhao Luan did not respond to Ling Han's challenge. Instead, it was a follower under him, by Yuanxi, that responded, expressing his disdain for Ling Han's challenge. He said that Ling Han was an ugly person, and hence always up to no good. What qualified him to battle Zhao Luan? If Ling Han wanted a battle, Bai Yuanxi would keep him company, but the condition was that it had to be a duel to the death. All of a sudden, everyone turned their attention to Ling Han, wanting to see how he would respond. One had to know that though Bai Yuanxi was not as dazzling as Zhao Luan, he was also a great elite of the high extreme of the mountain river tier, and furthermore a genius that was above 2 stars close to 3 stars. In a duel to the death with him, the chances that Ling Han would be instantly killed was close to 90%. No. Did he dare to accept or not? Ling Han immediately gave a positive response, was going to battle. The whole imperial capital was in an uproar over this. Ling Han was the hottest rookie now, while Bai Yuanxi, whether it was due to his personal abilities or the fact that he was a follower of Zhao Lun, received great attention as well. These two people were going to be in a mortal duel, which was definitely going to attract attention from all sides. As expected, there was naturally a new betting pool for the outcome of the battle between the two of them. How is it? What are the stakes? Ling Han appeared quite excited. Li Weiwei giggled and said, "If you win, it's 1:100. A muscle twitched in Ling Han's cheek. Although he knew that the higher the betting stakes were, the more he would earn, he had never imagined that it would be as exaggeratedly high as 1:100. How pessimistic a view did the masses actually have of him? There are no stakes for Bai Yuanxi winning, only stakes for how many moves he will take to beat you. Defeated with 1 move, 10-11, 2 moves, 10-12, 3 moves, 10:13. Li Weiwei began introducing the stakes again. It was apparent that even the banker did not have an optimistic view of Ling Han. Ling Han being able to withstand 100 moves actually reached the exaggerated extent of 110. Blockhead, how are we going to bet next? Li Weiwei's eyes lit up. Previously, she had really made a great sum. How much have you earned exactly? Ling Han couldn't help but ask. Your bet was 4,000, and I and Big Sister Yun placed a bet of 3,000 each, so we earned a total of 100,000. Li Weiwei exclaimed excitedly. Together, the two women actually earned more than he did. Ling Han sighed and said, "Of course the bet is on my win." Hey. It can't be that you are envious that Big Sister Yun and I earn more than you, so you want to scam us, right? Li Weiwei looked at Ling Han suspiciously. Am I that kind of person? Ling Han shook his head. Don't worry, if you bet on my win, the stakes are 1:100, and I guarantee that you two will win so much you'll be flying. Moreover, isn't my own capital of 4,000 also included in the bet? True. Li Weiwei finally nodded at this, and then asked curiously, what gives you that kind of confidence? My own abilities, naturally. Ling Han laughed. Zhao Luan did not accept the challenge. This was within Ling Han's expectations. In any case, he had only issued the challenge to win some money. Still, he had not foreseen that Bai Yuanxi would respond, and actually allow him to earn another sum. I'll trust you this once. However, if you cause me and Big Sister Yun to lose money, we will not spare you. Li Weiwei threatened fiercely. Don't worry. Just think of this as the dowry I present to the both of you. There is no way you two are going to lose money. Ling Han said with a grin. Now their capital of 10,000 had increased tenfold, and reached the large sum of 100,000. If he won with the stakes being 1:100, it would then become an astronomical sum of 1,000,000. This was even more profitable than alchemy. Unfortunately, this was also because the data on both sides was unequal. If they could know Ling Han as well as he knew himself, then they would only place the stakes at 110 at most. Ling Han was filled with anticipation. After he had obtained the money, it would be just in time to participate in the large-scale auction. He really wanted to see what kind of good stuff would be sold at the auction. There was a 3-day buffer period until the day of the battle, but Xue Yanyu did not appear, which made Ling Han feel slightly regretful. In these 3 days, he refined the final Flame Mountain River Stone, completely stabilizing his cultivation level at the medium extreme. At the same time, the might of the divine patterns of flame progressed another step further. After all, there was a total of 7 divine patterns of flame,
which was far more than the divine patterns of gravity.
She has to sacrifice her life if it saves him in critical moment. Think bodyguards blocking bullets for big shots. Chapter 984. The Unfortunate Tang Feng. 3 days went by, and Ling Han headed toward Thousand Peak Mountain. This was the location of their duel. This duel had attracted a huge amount of attention, and thus many people turned up to spectate the battle. Not only did students from the academy come, but all kinds of people from the imperial capital also appeared. They all went to great lengths to enter the academy so they could personally witness the duel. Even Zhao Luan turned up to spectate the battle. He stood atop a mountain peak with his hands clasped behind his back, and there were another 4 people standing beside him. They were Sha Yuan, Lu Huilan, Jing Wuxia, and Shangguan Yuanji. Each of them was renowned in the academy. Originally, Zhao Luan had been slightly weaker than these 4 individuals. However, after he advanced into the consummate level of the mountain river tier, his standing became equal with the 4 of them. Sha Yuan chuckled and asked, "How many exchanges do you guys think that brat can last?" "He's only at the low extreme, let's say at the peak stage," Lu Huilan said. "Even if he's a 4-star genius, that's only equivalent to a battle prowess on par with the peak stage of the medium extreme. Bai Yuanci would easily suppress him even if he was only an ordinary cultivator at the high extreme. Not to mention, Bai Yuanci is already at the middle stage of the medium extreme, and is even close to a 3-star genius." The Lu clan had many members who were loyal subordinates to Great General Zhao. Thus, Lu Huilan was naturally inclined to fully support Zhao Luan. However, she had spoken the truth, and both Jing Wuxia and Shangguan Yuanji nodded in agreement. Meanwhile, Zhao Luan wore a look of contempt and disdain. "Then let's make a bet," Sha Yuan said with a chuckle. "How so? What are the stakes?" Zhao Luan asked. He and Sha Yuan were both sons of great generals, and often clashed to determine who was the superior one among the two. As such, Zhao Luan naturally wasn't willing to back down. "I wager that the brat can last for over 500 exchanges." Sha Yuan smiled and said, "In fact, he might even win." Zhao Luan and the others were all astonished. How is that possible? The difference in power between Ling Han and Bai Yuanci was as clear as day. No matter what he did, there was not a single shred of chance that Ling Han could win. In fact, it was hard to say if he could even last for more than 10 exchanges. So, how could he last for 500 exchanges, much less win? "Brother Sha, are you really going to persist with your wager?" Jing Wuxia asked in a frosty voice. He was naturally cold and indifferent. It wasn't as if he held a strong animosity for everyone else. A smile stretched across Sha Yuan's face, and he said, "I'll just make a bet with you guys." "Since you're insistent on giving us a gift, count me in," Zhao Luan said. "I'll wager White Cloud Star Metal." Gasp. Lu Huilan, Jing Wuxia, and Shangguan Yuanji were all stunned. White Cloud Star Metal was an extremely precious level 7 godly metal. Even Sha Yuan was slightly startled. "Zhao Luan, how bold!" "Are you afraid?" Zhao Luan chuckled coldly. "I accept your wager," Sha Yuan said confidently. Lu Huilan immediately said, "Since Brother Sha is so bold, I can't let him down. I'll wager 3 drops of Cloud Phoenix True Blood." It was another huge stake. Of course, the Cloud Phoenix True Blood that Lu Huilan wagered couldn't have come from a true phoenix, an ancient divine beast. Rather, it was from its descendant whose bloodline was already extremely diluted. Even so, having the term phoenix in its name reflected its strength and rarity. "Hee, then I'll wager a 3 rhino dark jade," Shangguan Yuanji said with a smile. "1 blade of Yongxing grass," Jing Wuxia said coldly. Even though Sha Yuan had a relatively strong understanding of Ling Han, his mouth still went dry when he heard the stakes that the others brought in. If he lost, paying out the value of those 4 treasures would cause him to be short of money for the next 10,000 years. But what if he won? He would win huge. Riches were found in danger. "Then let us wait and see," Sha Yuan said with a chuckle. However, Zhao Luan and the others could all hear the nervousness in his voice. This was normal as the stakes were simply too high. Moreover, Ling Han's chances of winning were extremely slim.
Ling Han.
Tang Feng leaped out from the crowd and stood in Ling Han's path. He had already been waiting here for a long time. Ling Han glanced at him and said indifferently, "Who are you?" Tang Feng almost fainted in anger. "I'm the undisputed #1 in the low extreme division, yet you actually don't know me."
"Do you dare battle me?" he asked loudly.
Ling Han shook his head as he smiled and said, "Forget about it. I don't want to bully you."
"How arrogant."
Tang Feng was fuming as he threw a palm toward Ling Han's head. He and Ling Han were both of the low extreme division, so he didn't need to seek Ling Han's agreement before engaging in battle. He could attack without worries, and was free to do as he pleased as long as he didn't cripple or kill his opponent. Ling Han leaned sideways to dodge and he said, "This is the only warning I'll give. Don't provoke me, or else you're merely digging yourself a hole."
"Humph."
Tang Feng ignored his words, and divine light started to ripple from his body. When he extended his arm again, there were already 3 divine patterns etched on his palm, each radiating an ancient and primitive aura. "This is the 3-1 return to origin technique, right?" Someone in the crowd speculated. "That's right. I've heard that Tang Feng entered an ancient site once, and he received this profound technique there."
"Its might is astonishing, and it's part of the reason why he's become the #1 in the low extreme division of the Northern Institution."
"I'm curious to see how Ling Han will block it." It should be no problem. Otherwise, how can he duel by UNC if he can't even deal with Tang Feng? If he can't block this, then he'll be insta-killed by UNC. Boom! Tang Feng charged over. He appeared extremely mighty as he bathed in the glow of the divine light.
"You asked for this,"
Ling Han said as he attacked. Boom! He didn't suppress his aura any longer, and the image of 2 huge mountains appeared behind his back. There were divine patterns etched on these mountains, with the earthen yellow ones being divine patterns of gravity, and the fiery red ones divine patterns of flames.
Pang!
Tang Feng was sent flying by Ling Han's fist, and crashed into a nearby mountain face, instantly creating a deep human-shaped crater. His entire body was embedded in the mountain. His physique wasn't on the level of godly metals, so dark spots started to swim before his eyes, even though he had used his origin power to hastily block Ling Han's strike. His skin started to crack, and blood gushed from his wounds. At this moment, everyone fell silent. However, after a short moment, it instantly became noisy again. Who'd have thought? Ling Han has actually advanced to the medium extreme.
Amazing!
He was still only at the Shattering Void tier when he entered the Mystery Realm. It's only been half a year, yet he's already broken through to the medium extreme of the Mountain River tier. His cultivation speed is incredible. Indeed, even with the help of Mountain River stones, he still needed to comprehend the 2 extremes of the Mountain River tier by himself. Even 100 years is a short time to spend. However, he only needed half a year.
He's an absolute freak.
Haha. No wonder Ling Han ignored Tang Feng's challenge for such a long time. He was cultivating in seclusion in order to break through to the medium extreme. Tang Feng's so unfortunate. Ling Han is clearly more talented than him, and now he even enjoys an advantage in cultivation level. No wonder Tang Feng was defeated in a single strike. Normally, students at the medium extreme aren't allowed to actively attack students at the low extreme. However, he actively provoked Ling Han, so even if his teeth are knocked out, he can only swallow them along with his blood. The spectators were both surprised and amused, while Tang Feng had become nothing more than a clown at this moment. His sole purpose was to highlight Ling Han's strength. Atop the mountain peak, apart from Sha Yuan, Zhao Luan and the others all wore expressions of astonishment. Even they were unable to fathom Ling Han's tremendous cultivation speed. Zhao Luan chuckled coldly and asked, "Sha Yuan, is this the reason for your confidence?" So what if Ling Han had broken through to the medium extreme? He was only at the early stage, and even if he was a freak and a 5-star genius, his battle prowess could only be on par with the middle stage of the high extreme. By UNC, on the other hand, his cultivation level was already at the middle stage of the high extreme, and he was even a 3-star genius on top of that. There was a difference of almost 3 sub-minor levels, so no matter what happened, it would definitely be a one-sided duel. Chapter 985. Insta-killing by UNC.
Zhao Luan, since when did you become so impatient?
Sha Yuan laughed loudly and said, "We'll find out soon if we keep watching."
Zhao Luan humphed in reply. He was a few hundred years younger than Sha Yuan, and Sha Yuan was already at the peak stage of the consummate level while he had only just advanced to the consummate level.
As such, there was a difference of 3 sub-minor levels between them. If they fought, Zhao Luan was confident that he wouldn't lose, as he had secret techniques up his sleeves. However, just as he wasn't afraid of Sha Yuan wasn't afraid of him, either. Thus, he could only humph after hearing Sha Yuan's retort. Otherwise, being the petty person that he was, Zhao Luan would definitely think of ways to screw Sha Yuan over. Ling Han arrived at the arena that was located halfway up the mountain. Half a year ago, he had fought against Luo Ba in this same arena. Who would have thought that he would have another mortal duel so soon? Bai UNC was already waiting for him in the arena. He didn't seem impatient in the least, and sat cross-legged, looking like an unmoving stone statue. Elites such as him would be able to maintain their mental state for a few days, let alone a mere few hours. Ling Han stopped 30 meters from Bai UNC. "You've come?" Bai UNC opened his eyes, and it instantly was as if a bolt of lightning had flashed across the clear sky. As expected of an elite at the high extreme, just a single glance is already so powerful. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "I've come." "You've broken through the medium extreme so quickly," Bai UNC said. "How commendable." "It's just as though." Bai UNC faltered for a moment before continuing. "My young master is still in need of one more dog. If you obediently surrender, I can still spare your life." Ling Han sneered coldly and said, "It's your choice to be a dog, but don't drag others down to the same low level as yourself. You're truly base to the core." "How dare you!" Bai UNC roared loudly. Quang! Blood started seeping out from the ears of many spectators, and this shocked them immensely. Just the might of his roar was already so terrifying. There was a frosty look in Bai UNC's eyes as he glared at Ling Han, and he said, "Since you're unwilling to yield, die." Ling Han pointed a finger at him and said, "I originally planned to spare your life. However, since that's the case, I won't hold back either." "You speak nothing but empty threats." Bai UNC leaped out, and didn't even bother to summon a weapon. He merely spread his right hand, which was etched with 9 intertwining divine patterns, and pressed it toward Ling Han. His strength was far superior, so all he needed to do was crush his opponent head-on. A smile blossomed on Ling Han's face. "Xiao." He also leaped toward Bai UNC. Both of them had leaped at each other, so it was only natural that they quickly collided. Pang! Divine light fluctuated, and waves rippled across space as Bai UNC's palm slammed into Ling Han's chest. Bai UNC wore a look of pride. Since Ling Han was struck by his palm, his only fate was shattering into pieces. However, his look of pride quickly became one of shock and disbelief because Ling Han was not only unscathed, but was even smiling at him. "I must be seeing things." He had no time to ponder why Ling Han was unscathed as he hastily shot back in retreat. This was far too uncanny. Right at this moment, Ling Han waved his arm and tossed out a net. Originally, Bai UNC would have never fallen victim to such an attack. However, who told them to be so close to each other right now? Moreover, this attack was launched during a time when he thought that he had killed his opponent. The net unfurled and instantly entrapped him. Although Bai UNC was startled, he wasn't flustered in the least. He had been to many ancient sites with Zhao Luan, and had also experienced a great number of dangerous situations. Being calm in the face of danger was the most basic attribute of elites such as him. Otherwise, what right would he have to follow Zhao Luan? Chang! He drew his sword, and like a melody, the brilliant glow of his sword instantly echoed through the air. "Goodbye." Ling Han summoned a bow and immediately notched his ultimate arrow. He didn't want to give his opponent any chances. He wanted to slay one of Zhao Luan's powerful followers. Bai UNC's hair all stood on ends at this instant, and a sense of great danger instantly gripped his heart. He frantically tried to draw on his full power, yet to his shock, he discovered that his origin power had actually been suppressed. At most, He could only wield a power at the middle stage of the medium extreme. What net is this? This thought flashed through his mind, yet at this instant, Ling Han's arrow was already pointing at his head.
The arrow seemed like a fatal weapon that had been nurtured by heaven and earth, and sweat involuntarily formed on by UNC's palms.
Ling Han released his fingers, and the arrow became a streak of dazzling light as it raced out. Pooh! The arrow easily pierced through by UNC's head, and then flew out from the other side. Only the feathers of the arrow were stained with a few drops of blood. Pa! By UNC's entire head exploded. Insta-kill.
A deathly silence fell over the surroundings.
Who would have imagined that Ling Han could defeat Bai UNC? Moreover, not only did he win, he even performed an unbelievable insta-kill. If this result was flipped, no one would have been surprised. After all, Bai UNC possessed the strength to achieve such a feat. Now, however, everyone's mouth was wide agape in shock and disbelief.
Indeed, there were prodigies who could win against people with higher cultivation levels.
Otherwise, there wouldn't be the notion of 1-star geniuses, 2-star geniuses, and so on. However, the difference in cultivation level between Ling Han and Bai UNC was clear for all to see. It was a full 5 sub-minor levels. Moreover, Bai UNC was himself close to the level of a 3-star genius. Thus, the difference between him and Ling Han was at least 7 stars. Ling Han had managed to insta-kill someone while surpassing 7 stars. This was unbelievable. Who could believe this? Atop the mountain peak, Zhao Luan's expression instantly became dark. Someone like him obviously wouldn't care whether Bai UNC died or not. After all, Bai UNC was merely a dog who did his bidding. If he died, Zhao Luan could merely look for a new dog. Would he need to worry about no one pledging themselves to him? Of course not. The problem was, one needed to look at the owner before beating a dog.
Now that his dog had been shot dead before his very eyes, where was he to put his face?
I remember now. That's the crimson ground locking net. What crimson, what net? Crimson ground locking net. If one's trapped, their cultivation level will be suppressed by 1 full minor level. No wonder. The spectators all nodded in realization. If Bai UNC's cultivation level was suppressed by 1 minor level, then his peak battle prowess would only be able to reach the peak stage of the medium extreme. As such, being insta-killed by Ling Han went from an impossibility to a possibility. Humph! Zhao Luan leaped down from the mountain peak and landed beside Bai UNC's corpse.
He glared at Ling Han and said frostily, "You killed him? If you're not blind, you can probably see very clearly."
Ling Han was drained of all energy after unleashing the ultimate arrow, yet he didn't back down a single inch. Everyone gasped in astonishment. That was Zhao Luan, the #1 prodigy of the Scarlet Heaven Academy, and the only child of great General Zhao Ling Han was facing. A dark shadow fell across Zhao Luan's face, and he said coldly, "Since you've killed my underling, there's nothing more to say. Kneel down and kill yourself." So domineering. Ling Han roared with laughter and said, "Young Master Zhao, are you stupid? No one can kill your underlings? It was a fair duel, and I killed him without breaking any rules. My conscience would be clear even if the Empress herself were to question me." Humph! You killed my underling, so you deserve to die. Zhao Luan raised his eyebrows, and an overwhelming aura instantly emanated from his body. Dumb C***NT. Ling Han sneered. He was just about to retrieve his crimson ground locking net and leave. Shwa! Zhao Luan struck a palm toward Ling Han. He was at the consummate level, and he was more so a 4-star genius. How terrifying was his attack! Moreover, Ling Han was at his weakest right now. Pang! Ling Han was instantly hit and sent flying by the strike. Still not dead. A look of surprise involuntarily appeared on Zhao Luan's face as he gazed at Ling Han, who had blood seeping from the corners of his mouth. Chapter 986. Beautiful Guards. Although the palm strike just then wasn't Zhao Luan's full-strength attack, it was still definitely not something that a cultivator at the medium extreme should have been able to handle. When people spoke of star geniuses, they weren't referring to defenses, but rather referring to the destructive ability caused by battle prowess. Thus, even if Ling Han was a fabled 5-star genius, his defenses should still have only been at the early stage of the medium extreme. How was there only some blood seeping from his mouth after he took a strike from Zhao Luan? Zhao Luan immediately recalled that Ling Han had been unscathed after taking a strike from by UNC just then. However, Ling Han had immediately insta-killed by UNC after that, and his shocking feat caused everyone to forget that scene. Don't tell me that his body is forged from godly metal. Zhao Luan was astonished as this thought flashed through his mind. However, his hand didn't stop, and he instantly delivered another palm strike at Ling Han. Although his strike just then hadn't killed Ling Han, it had already succeeded in wounding him. It was evident that it was still possible to wound Ling Han even though his physique was incredibly strong. Ling Han hastily retreated. Unless he was faced with certain death, he definitely wouldn't expose the secret of his spatial god tool in front of so many people. However, he had just unleashed an ultimate arrow, so he still needed some time to recover his strength. Right now, he wouldn't even be able to handle a cultivator at the Shattering Void tier, much less Zhao Luan. Zhao Luan sneered and said, "I'm already targeting you, so how can you escape?" His palm rushed forward and slammed into Ling Han's chest. Pooh! Ling Han was sent flying once again. He felt extremely unwell, and it was as if his insides were churning violently. To his delight, however, both his origin power and stamina were recovering rapidly. It would take 30 minutes at most for him to recover to his optimal condition. The speed of recovery for his stamina was as he expected, but why was his origin power also recovering so quickly? This was a change that only occurred after he reached the medium extreme. Hang on. He had also recultivated the Universal 8 Desolation technique, so was it perhaps the effect of this cultivation technique? Also, although he was at the Mountain River tier before, he had never cultivated any immortal level cultivation technique. Did this also have an effect? Ling Han wasn't sure, because he had undergone too big a transformation after shooting that arrow in the flame cave. As a result, he wasn't able to determine what the main reason for his fast recovery was. Perhaps it was the combination of his transformations that led to this situation. Pang! He collapsed to the ground, and blood seeped from the corners of his mouth again. His godly bones groaned and crackled, and it was as if they were about to fracture. Zhao Luan was no ordinary consummate level cultivator, with his battle prowess surpassing his cultivation level by 4 stars. Thus, Ling Han still suffered some wounds even though his physique was on par with level 3 godly metal. However, the surrounding spectators almost wet their pants in fright. Ling Han was only at the medium extreme, yet he was only bleeding a little after taking 2 strikes from Zhao Luan head-on. This was far too unbelievable. Zhao Luan's eyes were icy cold as he strode toward Ling Han. So what if Ling Han's physique was powerful? Could this stop Zhao Luan from killing him? Zhao Luan, you're taking it too far. Li Weiwei stood forward bravely and said, "He's my man, and I forbid you from laying another finger on him." Zhao Luan didn't stop and he replied, "Fourth young miss, I'd give you face if this person was your husband. However, he's only a dog of yours, and my underling had also been killed by him." If the duel was unfair for anyone, it was unfair for Ling Han. "I don't care. I only saw my underling being killed by this dog. If I don't kill him, my followers will feel disappointed and alienated." Zhao Luan was also unreasonable, and he kept coming back to this same argument. As a direct descendant of a great general, he would be able to trivialize his killing of Ling Han as long as he had an excuse. He could escape the laws and punishments of both the Academy and Majestic Empire, and he would be able to swagger back out after lying low for 2 or 3 years. After that, there would be absolutely no repercussions. Li Weiwei screamed angrily and she shouted, "I don't care. You can kill him over my dead body. Fourth young miss, you regard yourself too highly," Zhao Luan said as he made a tapping motion toward Li Weiwei. Pooh! A streak of light instantly shot into Li Weiwei's body and rendered her both immobile and unable to speak. A radiant smile stretched across Zhao Luan's face, and he said to Ling Han, "You think I can't kill you just because we're in the academy? Wrong. It's simply that I've never considered you worthy enough to justify a second thought. However, you dare to refuse to become my dog, and now you've even killed my underling. You're seeking death." Zhao Luan,
You merely have an advantage because you've cultivated for a few more years than me, Ling Han said in disdain. If we were at the same age or same cultivation level, I would be able to suppress you with a single hand.
Gasp. Everyone sucked in a sharp breath. If Ling Han had kneeled down and begged for forgiveness, perhaps Zhao Luan would have let him off the hook. After all, the latter had only lost a little face. However, Ling Han chose to provoke him further, and such an action was merely pushing himself closer to death. Thinking about it more closely though, Ling Han's claim actually seemed to be quite reasonable. What cultivation level was Zhao Luan at when he was 20 years old? Indeed, he was a freakish talent, and he had reached 20 stars of the Shattering Void tier in his 20s. The Mountain River tier didn't contain him for long either, yet he was still only at the low extreme before the age of 50. Under such a comparison, the difference between the two was especially clear. Zhao Luan chuckled coldly, and said, "What's your identity? Are you worthy of challenging me?" Pang! He lashed out and sent Ling Han flying again. Quite some time had already passed since Zhao Luan had launched his first attack. So be it if no one had reacted in time after his first strike. However, it had already been so long, so the Academy was most likely aware of this already, right? Even so, not a single elder appeared. Although Zhao Luan looked unstoppable right now, any single cultivator at the Sun Moon tier would be able to easily suppress him. Even a 5-star genius wouldn't be able to surpass the barrier of an entire tier. Was the Academy silently allowing this? Could the son of great General Zhao act as he pleased? A chilly sensation involuntarily welled up in the spectators' hearts. Today, Zhao Luan's victim was Ling Han. So, what if his victim became them tomorrow? He was clearly surrounded by tens of thousands of spectators, but not a single person stepped forward to stop him. How could this not instill fear and panic in their minds? Stop! Another shout traveled over, and everyone saw a beautiful female speedily flying over. Ha! It's Gu Lingyu. Really? How has she also become acquainted with Ling Han? Gasp! Out of the 3 beauties of the imperial capital, 2 have actually stepped forward to help him. This guy has such luck with the ladies. Everyone immediately recognized the newcomer. She was Gu Lingyu, one of the 3 beauties of the imperial capital. In addition, she was also a new student at the Alchemy Institution. Zhao Luan's expression instantly became even darker. He couldn't even compete against an ant from a small world. This made him boil in anger and simmer with killing intent. Chapter 987. More Helping Hands. Zhao Luan had only wanted to kill Ling Han to save face before. From this instant on, however, he was finally taking Ling Han seriously, now viewing him as an enemy whom he definitely had to kill. Facing an enemy, of course he had to be as ruthless as the autumn wind was to falling leaves. Zhao Luan wore a cold expression as he made a tapping motion toward Gu Lingyu. As if becoming a stone statue, she instantly became immobile. Heh, no wonder you're so arrogant and dare to challenge me. It turns out that you're hiding behind women. Zhao Luan closed in on Ling Han and delivered another palm strike toward him. However, no one that I've wanted to kill has ever escaped alive. Pang! The ground tremored as his palm slammed down, yet Ling Han had already disappeared from the ground. There was a hint of astonishment on Zhao Luan's face as he had just seen Ling Han push off from the ground in a timely manner, relying on the momentum of his motion to evade his strike. Ling Han performed some stretches as he channeled the indestructible Heaven's Scroll. The wounds on his body instantly started to heal at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. There was a glimmer in his eyes and he said, "Zhao Luan, you still don't have the right to do as you please." After such a long time, he had already recovered some of his strength. "Is that so?" Zhao Luan said as he immediately composed himself. He would be able to easily suppress Ling Han as long as he was still at the medium extreme. He extended an arm and used his origin power to form a gigantic palm that bore down toward Ling Han from the sky. Not only was this palm incredibly quick, but it was also incredibly large. There was absolutely no way to escape it. Ling Han drew on all his power before throwing his fists toward the sky. However, the difference in power was too large, and he was still mercilessly struck down. He spat out another mouthful of blood. However, under everyone's surprised gaze, he immediately crawled up again, his body brimming with a soaring fighting spirit. Is this person an invincible god of war? Everyone was shocked, speechless. Normally speaking, a cultivator at the consummate level could easily crush a cultivator at the medium extreme with a single strike. After all, there was a battle prowess differential of a whopping 8 stars. However, Ling Han stood up time and time again, and this refreshed everyone's understanding of cultivation. So, cultivators at the medium extreme can also become this powerful. What cultivation technique is this ant from the small world practicing? Or what kind of mystical treasures has he received? Why is his battle prowess so high? And why is his physique so formidable? Even Zhao Luan started to develop covetous thoughts. He discovered that he had truly underestimated this person from the small world. He had always thought that small worlds were primitive and unable to produce any rare treasures. He was wrong. He refused to believe that anyone could be born as such. Ling Han had definitely received some kind of inheritance, some kind of astonishing inheritance. It would be his now. Die! Zhao Luan finally became serious, and divine patterns fluctuated with a terrifying might as he delivered a palm strike. Ling Han roared loudly as he unleashed his earth-overturning seal and activated his Eye of Truth. Pang! There was a loud collision, and he was instantly sent flying again. To say nothing of the fact that Zhao Luan was a 4-star genius, the 8 sub-minor levels between them was already something that Ling Han couldn't overcome. However, his physique was far too formidable, and his skin merely cracked a little after he faced Zhao Luan's strike head-on. His godly bones were completely unscathed. This was nothing to Ling Han, and his wounds instantly started to heal rapidly as he channeled the indestructible Heaven Scroll. Everyone's eyes bulged out in surprise. They had never seen anyone with such a powerful physique before. So be it if Ling Han's physique was formidable, but what was with his freakish healing ability as well? Unless one was able to severely wound Ling Han with a single strike, it was completely possible that he could heal himself time and time again. If one could only cause him minor wounds, it would be useless even if they were to completely exhaust themselves attacking him. Ha 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 ha. Following a loud laugh, a figure leaped down from the mountain peak and landed between Ling Han and Zhao Luan. Xiaofan. He unfurled his fan with a swoosh, and after flapping it a few times, he said, Zhao Luan, where are my winnings? A look of anger instantly surfaced on Zhao Luan's face, and he said, Do you think that I'm going to cheat you? That's hard to say. Every day is an uneasy day before the winnings enter my pocket. Sha Yuan smiled and said, I have to ask for my winnings openly even if you're my blood brother. Hurry up and hand me my winnings. Zhao Luan knew that Sha Yuan was purposefully distracting him in order to protect Ling Han. However, how could he do as Sha Yuan pleased? Sha Yuan, don't think that I'm unaware of what you're doing, he said coldly. What am I doing? Sha Yuan asked with a smile. Zhao Luan took a deep breath and said, I'll give you 2 sheets of white cloud star metal if you let today's matter slide. Sha Yuan's strength and status were both equal to his, and it would genuinely be a hassle if he were to stick his nose into the matter. Thus, he was willing to sacrifice another sheet of white cloud star metal in exchange for Sha Yuan leaving the matter between him and Ling Han alone. 2 sheets of white cloud star metal. Sha Yuan's hearts thumped in excitement. 1 sheet of white cloud star metal was only enough to form part of a god tool and raise its quality by a little. 2 sheets, on the other hand, were enough to forge a complete god tool. That was a level 7 god tool. Just thinking about it made him shiver in eagerness. One had to realize, godly metals became extremely rare starting from level 5 onwards. He only pondered for a short moment before immediately coming to a decision. Deal! After saying this, he retreated to the side and acted as if the matter had nothing to do with him. Zhao Luan turned his gaze to Ling Han once more. This brat had just caused him to lose another sheet of white cloud star metal, and this made his killing intent burn even stronger. At the same time, he also became more eager to learn the unbelievably powerful secret behind Ling Han's power. Ling Han glanced at Sha Yuan, his good impression of him vanishing into smoke. Then, he drew his divine sword and raised his left palm as he prepared to defend his dignity. Meow! Who dares to touch this king's cat slave? The The big white cat brandished its paws at Zhao Luan as it appeared. Head Fu's beast pet? Zhao Luan said in surprise. This lowly ant from the small world was truly mysterious.
In just a few days, he had already become acquainted with those related to the Left Minister, Head Fu, and the Alchemy Institution.
Pay! Trash such as humans are all this king's cat slaves. The big white cat said proudly.
Heh, for the sake of Head Fu, I'll spare your life.
Zhao Luan made a pointing motion in an attempt to subdue the white cat. Xiao! The white cat's body flashed aside at an incredible speed. Zhao Luan was slightly startled. The speed of the white cat was beyond his expectations. However, Zhao Luan was merely a little surprised. After all, his cultivation level of the low extreme was absolute. The big white cat was immobilized by Zhao Luan after only 3 exchanges. Zhao Luan was also careful with his attacks, and he only stripped the big white cat of its ability to move. He didn't hurt it a single bit. Detestable human, hurry up and release this king! The big white cat yelled. It appeared extremely furious. Everyone was astonished. The Left Minister and Head Fu were both elites at the heavenly body tier, and it was a huge surprise that Ling Han was actually able to become friendly with their forces at the same time. Even Zhao Luan started to feel a little pressure. If Sha Yuan hadn't moved aside for material benefits, it would have been 3 heavenly body tier forces members standing up for Ling Han. However, thinking back to the fact that Ling Han potentially had a peerless inheritance, he immediately steadied his resolve again. He definitely had to snatch it. Die! He swiped his palm toward Ling Han. You go die! Ling Han roared furiously as his sword and palm both struck out in unison. He had started to counterattack. Chapter 988. Arrival of the 9th King. However, it didn't matter how freakish Ling Han was. After all, one's cultivation level limited how powerful they could become. Under Zhao Luan's powerful and relentless attacks, Ling Han could only be sent flying by slashes, palm strikes, and kicks. However, what made the spectators' heads go numb was the fact that Ling Han was still alive and kicking after taking all those strikes head-on. At most, he had only bled a little more than before. This caused Sha Yuan to also itch with eagerness. If he could obtain such a formidable physique, would becoming invincible in his tier still be a mere dream? Would he still allow Zhao Luan to enjoy the title of #1 prodigy by himself? He secretly decided that he would rush over no matter what if Zhao Luan managed to kill Ling Han. He would cut in before Zhao Luan, then pluck Ling Han's soul and obtain his incredible secret. Now, however, he would let Zhao Luan be that evil person who killed Ling Han. In some hidden area. Can we still not stop him? Zhang Deman asked in a panicked voice. His impression of Ling Han was fairly good. The head of institution said that we must give great General Zhao some face, an elder said. So we have to give Zhao Luan a limited amount of special treatment. Anyway, there's us here, so that brat definitely won't face any fatal danger. We can take advantage of this opportunity and suppress Zhao Luan's conceit and arrogance in a moment. That way, even great General Zhao won't be able to say anything. Otherwise, even Head Fu won't be able to contain the rage of an elite at the heavenly body tier. However, that brat seems to be able to take quite the beating. What an absolute freak. Indeed, indeed. If I hadn't seen this with my own 2 eyes, I would have never believed that a cultivator who has just advanced to the medium extreme would be able to take so many strikes. By the looks of it, we can completely return home to take a nap, then come back over to check on the situation. There was a total of 7 elders whispering to each other, and they were all astonished by the strength that Ling Han had displayed. Zhao Luan's expression became increasingly cold. Although Ling Han was continuously being wounded, he just wouldn't die no matter what. The longer this lasted, the more face he would lose. Even ordinary cultivators at the consummate level wouldn't need so long to dispose of a cultivator at the medium extreme, not to mention that he was a 4-star genius. Zhao Luan, are you done yet? An aloof yet charming voice traveled over as Shui Yanyu walked over from the distance. Her beautiful face was full of anger. An excited expression instantly spread across Zhao Luan's face, and there was a hint of lust in his eyes. Among some circles in the imperial capital, Shui Yanyu had the nickname Little Empress.
This wasn't because she was very strong, very talented, or had a very powerful background, but instead because of the hint of seductiveness in her aloof nature that was a little like that of the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire.
The Empress was out of everyone's league, but if they could capture Shui Yenyu's heart, she would still act as a good replacement. Thus, the number of people pursuing Shui Yenyu also far exceeded the number of people pursuing Zhou Minghuai, who was one of the twin pearls of the empire. It was only because Zhao Lun, the only child of great General Zhao, had acted earliest and announced his ownership of Shui Yenyu that no one dared to openly covet her. She was a seductive beauty who could hook one's soul, and worried that his son would drown in a sea of lust. Great General Zhao forbade Zhao Luan from marrying before he reached the Sun-Moon tier. It was because of this that Shui Yenyu was able to maintain her freedom until now. Otherwise, she would have already been sold by her clan. Thus, Zhao Luan would feel a burning desire and lust every time he saw Shui Yenyu, and he could barely contain himself from immediately pushing this captivating and seductive beauty down. Hee, I'm merely killing a person, Zhao Luan said indifferently. Why such an overreaction, Yenyu? Ever since Shui Yenyu had publicly said that she had made a private pledge of marriage with Ling Han, Zhao Luan had already sentenced Ling Han to death in his mind. He had simply been lacking an excuse to kill him. Don't drag other unrelated people into the matter between you and me. Shui Yenyu scolded loudly. Zhao Luan sneered and said, This brat isn't an unrelated person.
Zhao Luan, what do you want?
Shui Yenyu shouted as she bit her ruby lip. Originally, she had indeed only planned on using Ling Han to escape Zhao Luan's clutches. After their trip to the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm, however, her mindset underwent a gradual change. Now, she definitely didn't want to see Ling Han die. Zhao Luan involuntarily squinted his eyes in anger. He had always held Shui Yenyu in high regard, but had Shui Yenyu ever cared for him even a little? And now, Shui Yenyu actually looked like she was willing to sacrifice everything for a lowly ant from a small world. His eyes turned red from extreme jealousy. No, Ling Han must die. Zhao Luan humphed in fury and pointed a finger at Shui Yenyu, rendering her immobile. Then he charged toward Ling Han. Die, die, die. There's no way that I can't even kill a measly ant of the medium extreme. Zhao Luan chuckled coldly as frightening divine patterns flashed across his hands like undulating water. Pa! Zhao Luan's palm struck over, and a gaping wound instantly appeared in Ling Han's chest. His blood and flesh instantly disappeared, revealing his white bones.
What was harrowing was that Ling Han was already channeling his indestructible Heaven's Scroll, yet the rate at which his wound healed was unbelievably slow.
Ha 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 ha! Seeing that his strike had wounded Ling Han, Zhao Luan instantly started to laugh loudly. He would corrode all of Ling Han's flesh, then slowly disintegrate his divine sense. He would wipe his love rival off the face of this world. The medium extreme is only the medium extreme, after all, he said in disdain. Ling Han wasn't flustered, and as he continued to defend against Zhao Luan's strikes, he coldly responded, You're merely relying on the fact that you're 2 minor levels above me. If we were on the same cultivation level, I could slay you as easily as I slay chickens. It's a shame that you'll never get such a chance, Zhao Luan said in a sinister voice. You're destined to die here today. His attacks became even more frantic as he spoke. Who said he won't? A furious voice sounded in the distance. Greetings, 9th King. Everyone in the surroundings instantly kneeled down to pay their respects. No one here was exempt from this. The left and right ministers and the 7 generals were elites at the heavenly body tier, so they didn't need to kneel when seeing the Empress. However, they still had to cup their fists to express their absolute respect. Seeing the 9 kings was equivalent to seeing the Empress. This was the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire's holy decree. Zhao Luan wasn't great General Zhao, so he instantly stopped his attacks and half-kneeled on the ground. Hu Feiyun walked out from the crowd of spectators and instantly yelped in surprise upon seeing the gaping wound on the left of Ling Han's ribcage. Ling Han, you're wounded. The spectators were almost frightened to death when they heard her. The 9th King's relationship with Ling Han is this good? She was the 9th King. What kind of status was this?
Even the left and right ministers and the 7 generals had to respectfully obey her commands.
She was one of the 9 people the Empress was most fond of. Yet, Ling Han had actually become acquainted with her. Jealousy instantly appeared on everyone's faces. If Ling Han was genuinely able to marry the ninth king, his status would instantly soar from that of a lowly ant to an unimaginable height. Even powerful figures such as the left and right minister wouldn't be able to match his status. Ling Han nodded and said, "I'm fine." Zhao Luan's body was trembling slightly. How could he imagine that Ling Han would somehow become acquainted with the ninth king while having a dubious relationship with Shui Yenyu? Where was justice? Hu Feiyun's expression relaxed slightly when she heard Ling Han's reply. "Zhao Luan, what's so impressive about bullying someone weaker than you? Everyone says that you're the #1 prodigy in the imperial capital. So, why don't you show me your abilities today? Mu, seal his cultivation level and make him fight with Ling Han on equal footing." She turned around and issued an order to a female guard. "As you command." The female guard showed no hesitation as she pressed her palm toward Zhao Luan. Chapter 989. Residual Gold War Buddha Fist. Although Zhao Luan was surprised and angry, he didn't dare go against the ninth king's will. Moreover, the female guard was an elite at the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, and her strength was several tens of thousands of times stronger than his. Thus, it came as no surprise that his cultivation level was instantly sealed. Black divine chains appeared on 2 of his mountain rivers, forcefully locking them down. His cultivation level immediately fell to the medium extreme, which was the same as Ling Han's. Although there were many powerful elders in the academy, none of them came out to help Ling Han just then, as they were all wary of Great General Zhao. Now that the ninth king had personally issued a command, who still dared to stick their nose in this matter? Out of Great General Zhao and the ninth king, who was more influential? If Great General Zhao dared to provoke the ninth king, the 7 generals would quickly become the 6 generals. There was no doubt about this. "Now, you two can battle again." Hu Feiyun's voice was cold as if she wasn't biased toward any one of them. Zhao Luan was naturally seething with anger. What kind of demonic power did this lowly being from the small world possess? It had only been half a year, yet the left minister's daughter and the ninth king were all standing up for him now. Meanwhile, although Shui Yenyu and Gu Lingyu's statuses were much lower, they were still renowned beauties from well-off families. He laughed with confidence as he spoke. "So what if we battle with the same cultivation level? I, Zhao Luan, am the #1 prodigy of these past 1,000 years. Who can challenge my might?" However, he genuinely didn't dare to take his opponent lightly this time around. He balled his hands into fists. Wang! Golden light instantly radiated from his fists. Pu. His sleeves bulged up as if his muscles were suddenly exploding in size at this moment. Is this Great General Zhao's ultimate technique, the residual Gold War Buddha Fist? Someone yelped in surprise. That's right, this is one of Great General Zhao's ultimate techniques. It's rumored that when Great General Zhao was at the Sun-Moon tier, he once used 3 moves from this technique to smash a powerful enemy at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier to pulp. That was the battle which earned him the status of a great elite. After so many years, Great General Zhao has definitely raised the might of the residual Gold War Buddha Fist by a few notches. Zhao Luan is getting serious this time. Of course he is. They're both at the same cultivation level right now, and Ling Han is also a 4-star genius. If he doesn't take it seriously, won't he simply be seeking death? I seem to have heard that Ling Han reached the Crimson Lake Island 3 times. So, is it possible that he's reached the level of 5-star genius? Hee. 5-star geniuses only exist in legends. How can it be so easy to reach it? Him reaching the island 3 times is indeed more impressive than Zhao Luan. However, he can at most only surpass 4.5 stars. He definitely can't surpass 5 stars. Zhao Luan strode toward Ling Han as the spectators quietly chattered among themselves. Ling Han clasped the wound on his left side with one of his hands. There was a strong corrosive ability that could melt metal and disintegrate bones contained within Zhao Luan's palm strike. Moreover, it even formed divine patterns in his wound, and these divine patterns continued to circulate and prevent his wound from healing. Ling Han had to destroy these divine patterns before he could heal his wound. However, These divine patterns were abnormally sturdy, and even his origin power couldn't wash them away. Moreover, he couldn't enter the Black Tower right now, which meant he couldn't use the Black Tower's abilities to get rid of these divine patterns, either. He could only rack his brain for other ideas. A thought flashed through Ling Han's mind, and he instantly activated his divine patterns of flame. Hiss! The divine patterns clashed, and the foreign divine patterns were quickly burned into ashes. As expected, when Zhao Luan had attacked him just then, he had seen a layer of water-like divine light. That was most likely a water element cultivation technique.
It was in conflict with the fire element, and using one against the other was the best way to deal with techniques of these elements.
Even at the same cultivation level, I can still crush you with ease. Zhao Luan swung his fists as he charged over. First strike of the residual gold war Buddha fist rising wave stirs winds and clouds. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, I've never come across an opponent who's stronger than me at the same cultivation level. You're no different. He unleashed his earth overturning seal in reply to Zhao Luan's strike. Pang! Ling Han stood proud and unmoving during this exchange. Meanwhile, Zhao Luan heavily stumbled back a dozen or so steps. The blood in his body churned, and his face also shifted between white and red. Gasp! When battling in the same cultivation level, Zhao Luan is truly no match for Ling Han. Excitement and disbelief swept through the crowd. Putting aside Zhao Luan's personality, the level of his natural talent was indeed worthy of being number one in the chaotic star's majestic empire.
In fact, he had displayed an even stronger potential, and there was a chance that he could become an elite of the heavenly body tier in the future.
Yet, a freakish talent such as him was actually at a disadvantage while battling against someone at the same cultivation level. This Ling Han. His power is definitely not limited to the early stage of the medium extreme. It's probably close to the peak stage already. I agree. His palm techniques seem very ordinary, yet he's still able to wield such terrifying battle prowess.
This is almost certainly because his power far exceeds his cultivation level, therefore raising the level of his battle prowess.
Gasp! Does this mean his battle prowess will become even stronger if he cultivates a higher-level secret technique? He can become a 5-star genius. Everyone exclaimed in surprise. Were they truly going to witness the rise of a 5-star genius?
Damn it, damn it!
Zhao Luan roared in fury as he launched another attack. Second strike of the residual gold war Buddha fist 3 waves conquer the world. Boom! The might of his fist instantly soared threefold. As before, Ling Han responded with his earth overturning seal. Both he and Zhao Luan were using metal element cultivation techniques, and as metallic sheen collided and intertwined, it was as if both of them had become metallic gods of war. As their attacks collided, both of them leaped backward. They were evenly matched in this exchange.
Ha 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 ha! Zhao Luan roared with laughter and said, Your strength is only a...
I still haven't unleashed my most powerful third strike. Ling Han smiled calmly and said, You're feeling too good about yourself, and you're also too good at deceiving yourself. Who said that this is the full extent of my strength? Is that so? Zhao Luan charged over again, once more unleashing the second strike of the residual gold war Buddha fist. Terrifying rays of metallic light intertwined as their attacks collided. Very few people noticed that Zhao Luan's eyes would become slightly more golden every time he launched an attack.
After 10 or so strikes, his eyes had already become completely gold.
Third strike of the residual gold war Buddha fist 9 waves pierced the sun and moon. His body grew rapidly as he roared, and he transformed into a golden giant that measured a full 9 meters in height. He had finally unleashed his most powerful strike, one that raised his battle prowess by a whopping 9-fold. It wasn't that he was going easy on Ling Han just then. Rather, he needed to strengthen his physique before he could unleash the third strike. Thus, he needed to enter the state of the 9-meter golden body first, something that required considerable time. Once this transformation was complete, however, he was able to launch an earth-shattering strike. Boom! A gigantic golden fist smashed down from the sky. There was nothing fancy about it, and it was all brute explosive power. Ling Han struck out with his palm again, merely unleashing the earth overturning seal.
Pang!
Fist and palm met, and the discrepancy in their size was jarringly obvious. The golden fist crushed down and relentlessly pushed Ling Han backward.